Testing. Okay, now I'm unmuted. Great. Okay, cool. I was muted for a second there. Hello, and welcome to a stream where we are going to be streaming content. So today, I just wanted to go through and read some old Final Fantasy 15 interviews with you guys, discuss some stuff, and I figured this would be really interesting. So, I have some interviews written out that we can go over. If there's any other interviews that you guys want me to check out, then you can feel free to send them. I don't think YouTube chat will allow it, but I know that Twitch chat will. So you may have to like send that to me over on Twitch if necessary. But oh shit, I just realized I never posted about this stream. Let me do that real quick, chat. I'm so sorry. I did not even share the links on I go to Twitter and I see a black and white photo of Uematsu, and I really wish they would not do that for obvious reasons. Every time I see that, it gives me a fucking jump scare. And please don't use black and white photos of people. I think for obvious reasons. But anytime you use a black and white photo for someone who is still alive and well, it scares the piss out of me for a second. So please don't do that. That is not nice, not fun. Do not, please. Anyways, guys, it should be a pretty good stream today. I've been looking forward to this, and I'm even more excited for when we get to play the game, which I think will start the game itself probably next week. I think we'll actually start playing the game. And that much I'm definitely looking forward to. I'm looking forward to hopping back into this game. Now, I've already done like a little bit of reading just as I was trying to find like some good articles to go over. And I found some stuff that has already made me thoroughly crash out. Like, I'm like, holy fuck. But first, before we do that, I do want to talk about something really fast. Hold on. I have a usage limit in place to keep myself from being chronically online. I'm going to up that really quickly just so that I don't hit the limit, because I'm almost at the limit. This is one of the things about like when you're a content creator and you also don't want to be, you know, glued to a fucking screen all the time. And you have to like, you know, you have to try to you have to try to like make things to like make you not be online so much. So I try to have like Chrome extensions and like YouTube apps. I'm in the same boat. Yeah. Because you don't want to be online all fucking day, right? Because the apps are made by the best psychologists in the world to make you chronically addicted to them. And it's just like, you don't want to be addicted to these to these apps and such. But it's fucking hard when you also work in this space. And so there is a balance. Anyways, I wanted to cover this entirely unrelated thing before we actually dive into this. Nier Automata has shipped and digitally sold 10 million copies worldwide. Glory to mankind. And we even got a brand new key artwork here. Really fucking amazing. So to give you guys a little bit of perspective, Nier Automata has basically outsold every Final Fantasy except for three of them, that being Final Fantasy 7, 10, and 15. And by the looks of it, it probably will outsell like 15, which is at 10 million units by like next year, because the current rate, it is selling 1 million copies per year. It's been out almost 10 years, and each year it sells 1 million copies. This has kind of been the evergreen title that Square Enix has been looking for. They announced a new Nier, sorta. Yes. So let's let's talk about that. So the stream ends like because they did like a Nier Automata, like it was like an anniversary stream or something like that. But this was kind of the big news. It says Nier Automata to be continued. Now this is very interesting phrasing here, because notice that it doesn't say near to be continued. It does not say Drakengard or anything else to be continued. It specifically says Nier Automata to be continued. Not Nier series, not Drakengard, Nier Automata to be continued. If you are aware of the significance of this, then you would know that this basically implies that a Nier Automata sequel is coming. And for those of you who are completely out of the loop, Nier Reincarnation, the mobile game, was also a direct sequel to Nier Automata, right? But with them saying Nier Automata to be continued, it's implying that the next Nier game will also be a kind of direct follow-up to Nier Automata. So the rumors about A2 being the main character and the story continuing does look to have some legitimacy to it. I fucking love Nier Automata. It's like one of my favorite games of all time. I am so thoroughly looking forward to this. I really cannot wait to see what else they have cooking up. Taro must have lost all of his money for this to happen. I mean, no. Listen. Well, yeah, probably, because he doesn't really like to do direct sequels like this. But Nier Automata was like so popular, right? 10 million. He probably wasn't really left with a lot of options on whether he wanted to do a sequel or not. I imagine Square Enix was like, bro, 10 million. Are you serious? You need to do a sequel. Like, you have to do a sequel. This isn't an option. So, I really do think that they probably did put him in a corner, and they were like, yo, you got to do Nier 2. You got Nier Automata 2. I think this summer we'll have a lot of big Square Enix announcements. Jeff tweeted this out. That's right. Jeff Keighley also tweeted this exact thing out. Let me see if I have the... Yeah, there we go. So this is pretty substantial, right? Like Jeff Keighley tweeting out, hey, Nier Automata to be continued. I think that this is pretty much confirmation that we're not going to be waiting too much longer until the next Nier game, is delivered. But holy crap, man. It's been so long. It's been 10 years and we don't even have the next Nier game announced. What would a sequel even be about? I have no idea, right? But if you think about it, when you were playing Nier Replicant, it was really hard to imagine, I suppose, at that time even, like, what would a Nier Replicant follow-up look like? And then Nier Automata came out, and it's like, oh, shit. But Nier Automata 2, I think, is like a little bit easier to imagine in terms of potentially setting and in terms of like what character you would play as, which I believe would be A2. What I think is more difficult to imagine is like kind of the themes that we'd go into with Nier Automata 2. because I feel like Near Replicant and Near Automata are very similar thematically. So I'm not exactly sure where you go with the next Near that isn't kind of a repeat of the first two, right? So I think that, the first two Near games, Replicant and Automata, they kind of go into a lot about our perceived differences of one another and how we potentially like look at another form of life and think of it as lesser than us or different than us. And then as we get to know it, we begin to see the kind of humanity in them. And we realize that, hey, maybe we shouldn't slaughter these people. Um, it is definitely kind of an allegory for things like xenophobia and another word that I don't think Twitch and YouTube are comfortable with me saying, but because of controversial content, but it starts with the G. And I think you guys know um, what that word is, but it's kind of allegorical for that type of thing too, especially, Automata, I mean, Replicant too. They very much go into, um, you know, that type of story theme, right? But again, Automata and Replicant both have those two things in common, right? So there is a big question of where do you go with the next Near that isn't just a repeat of that. But obviously, you have to kind of keep that element of like, what is humanity and what does it mean to be like a sentient life form and what does it mean to be alive as part of the core of the story, because that's what Near is all about. And I think without those things, ultimately it's not Near. So I'm very curious to see where that goes. I'm sure that it will be more focused um, on A2. I think that A2 will be the protagonist. We've already seen kind of hints of that. She was shown off in like one of the key artworks, and it was alluded to the fact that we'd be playing as potentially A2. And ultimately, I think if I recall correctly about my Near lore, I may have to go back and look this up, but it was kind of confirmed afterwards that even though they all survived, Yoko Taro, like, it was either in like a novel or some type of stage play or whatever, he basically said that like um 9S and 2B die again. So I don't know if they would be brought back or whatever. If there are any like Taro heads in the chat that would be able to correct me on that, please do. But because the end of Automata is basically the happiest ending to any Yoko Taro work ever. Which actually, I think that Automata's ending actually really shows the range of Yoko Taro, right? That he's able to write extraordinarily depressing story, and he's also able to write um, kind of hopeful too, and he's able to do both at the same time. I think that him and Natsuko Ishikawa of Creative Studio 3 are both masterminds of tone and being able to write this insanely depressing story while also writing something that can be profoundly hopeful at the same time. And, I don't think I would have said that of Taro until you really get to Near Automata's true ending. And there is some hope. But yeah, then it seems like he undoes that in some of the off-screen material. So if 2B and 9S do definitively die, I want to see at least see that on screen, i.e. a prologue sequence or something. Yeah. I mean, I think they have to, because if they don't actually cover that, then I feel like it would feel incomplete and not really, most people just wouldn't understand what's going on, right? And also, too, an Automata sequel is kind of crazy because most of Yoko Taro's works are not really kind of like direct sequels in that way, right? Taro usually is like, yeah, 10,000 years later or something absurd. Um, to the point of where if you didn't know anything about Drakengard and you picked up Nier Replicant, you would still get a very self-contained story. You may not know everything and about all the lore. However, I think you can pick up any Taro game and enjoy it as its own work, even in the void of knowing the rest of the stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. Obviously, if you do know the story of Yoko Taro games and how they all piece together, it does become tremendously more deep and more profound and more interesting. However, I don't think it's like hard required knowledge. Like you are fucking locked out if you don't know what the hell is going on. Nier Automata is the perfect example of this, right? Like most people, just statistically, did not play Replicant before and did not play Drakengard, right? Just purely statistically, because we have 10 million Nier Automata players, and we have certainly a lot less than that for the rest of Yoko Taro's games. And Automata was still widely praised for its story, even by people who hadn't played any of the games prior. And so much so that there became an insane amount of demand for everything Taro going back. People started like going back and watching cutscene compilations of Drakengard and Nier Replicant and stuff like that, and they got really involved and interested in them. So I think his works have really been great at being standalone, and then also too they connect in profound ways. And yes, you get more appreciation if you know how they connect, but you don't necessarily need to enjoy them. So that becomes extraordinarily different if what they're planning is something more like a Nier Automata 2, right? Like if they are planning something that's a direct follow-up, it's basically going to be the first Nier that is probably going to require you have some knowledge of the previous one, which will be interesting. Roy Mustang, thank you so much for the super chat. NSP, Nier Automata has sold over 10 million copies, which means it has outsold every single Square Enix game in the 2010s and 2020s except FF14. FF14 is a bit difficult to count because of how it works, but it is outsold everything except FF15. I would say actually, because that one we can in a much more straightforward way compare. And yeah, it's basically outdone everything outside of FF15, and I actually think it's going to outsell FF15. I do. The reason I think it's going to outsell FF15 is that for 10 years straight now, the game has consistently sold about 1 million units per year. 1 million units per year for a fucking decade. No other Square Enix game is doing that we know of. And this also goes back to what we were saying about Final Fantasy sales, right? Where if the news is good, they would share it. They never stop sharing Nier Automata sales news. And the reason is because the news is always good. Nier Automata has always sold a brand new amount of units. It is always sold. It's always sold like a brand new milestone. It's constantly pushing. Again, it sold 9 million. Last year they were at 9 million, and now this year they're at 10 million. And the year before that they were at the 8 million. At 8 million. So it just continues to go up. Pixel Remaster got an update last night, bro. Wait, did it? Or are you pulling my chain? I didn't actually see that. I've been off social media. Wait, 6 million? 6 million's old. 6 million... Yeah, no, 6 million we known about since December. But also with the Pixel Remaster, it's weird because I think they count, like, if you buy the collection, that's 6 sales. I think they count it as. So, yeah, there's an argument right now that Nier is Square's most valuable IP. Because even if the next game sells like 70% of what Automata did, that would still make it basically like higher selling than pretty much all the Final Fantasy games right now, aside from Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 1. So that's pretty crazy. And the fact that we've had to wait 10 years for something to happen is just bonkers. Um, but hopefully, again, the promise is Nier Automata to be continued. I think anyone who has watched the animated series has maybe some vague theories about what that potentially means. So I'm pretty excited. Remake Part 1 is the most successful game after 15. Yeah. Yeah. And then it just, well, you guys know the rest. How is it selling with no marketing? That's crazy. Nier Automata is viral, man. It's viral. There have been so many essays on why it's a great game. I've made videos on why it's a great game. Every YouTube essayist on the platform that I know of has made essays on why Nier Automata is like a genius game. Nier has also influenced games of late, like Silent Hill F and Expedition 33, which have very direct callbacks and very direct implementations of their stories that are kind of similar to Nier. Stellar Blade, also, yes, thank you for pointing that out. Stellar Blade is basically also a Nier Automata link. Nier is one of the most influential game series, basically, of the modern era, right? Like, we're actually seeing so many games inspired by Nier. And according to, but according to Yoko Taro, he just basically stole Evangelion and he just made his own version of that. And so really, this is all just Eva influence. Leanthus, thank you so much. For, oh shit, tier 1 for 6 months in advance? God damn. God damn. What the fuck, bro? Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Well, I'll give you your money's worth for 6 months, I promise. And beyond, I promise, promise. You're the best, man. Um, so yeah, hopefully Square, is getting their shit together, and we're gonna see the next Nier pretty soon. It's amazing to see how far this series has come. Let me tell you guys something. Like because I didn't play Nier Replicant at first, or Gestalt, when it first came out. I wasn't into the Taroverse, but when Nier Automata was first announced, my reaction was, isn't that the game that like 3 people played? They're making a sequel to that. That was kind of my reaction, I'm not gonna lie. And then I played it. And then I played it, and I was like, oh shit. This game got the sauce, bro. Roy Mustang, thank you for another super chat. What are your thoughts on FF, a franchise that sold more than Call of Duty, Tomb Raider, etc. back in the day, getting destroyed by Nier sales? Getting destroyed by Nier in sales now. I mean, it does kind of show that that they have lost their way in something, right? Like I don't know what part to really point to, and it's probably multifactorial. But if you told me back then, because Nier Automata and 7R, were they announced at like the same E3? I want to say they were announced like really close together. If you were to tell me that Nier Automata, the game, like the previous game I just told you, I thought would have sold like maybe like 4 units this time instead of 3, because the first game, I was like, did anyone even play that? Like, if you would have told me that that game would outsell Final Fantasy VII Remake, I would not have believed you. Straight up. I don't think anyone would have believed you. Like that doesn't even fucking make sense. Um but yeah, like I said, there is not like one thing I can really point to with Final Fantasy situations and honestly tell you that I think, oh, it's this thing and that they've lost their way with, or that thing. I think there's just so many factors that contribute in multiple different ways to why FF is kind of stagnated and slowed down in sales, and so uh, I think it's not just like a singular thing that you can just point to and say this is the thing that they fucked up, and I think that a lot of people do. And I think even myself in the past, I've kind of like pointed to certain things and been like, this is the problem. And I'm like, but I don't think any like one singular thing is like the whole problem, if you know what I mean. There are just so many different things you can point to. I do think that game quality is starting to get back on track in a pretty substantial way, right? Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was basically the highest rated Final Fantasy that we gotten in. Um, Actually, I think it was like the highest rated of, aside from Final Fantasy IX, all right? And if you factor in the sheer number of reviews, there's an argument that you can make that Rebirth technically got more positive reviews or higher numbered reviews than any previous Final Fantasy, right? Because if you go through and you add up all the nines and tens, it probably has more than any previous FF, right? Just in sheer quality, even if the average isn't. Part of that is just due to more reviewers. But ultimately, the argument that I'm trying to make here is that um, I think that the games are starting to get back there, right? They're starting to get back on track. Um, so this is like a Reddit thread, and then it had like a ton of different links to interviews. I have essentially kind of compiled also too like my own list of stuff um, that we could go through, and I also thought that this comment from Jacob Novick, who has kind of been saying some wild stuff lately on the TL, but that's neither here nor there. The information that he gives seems to be accurate. So I kind of want to start here with what I think is kind of the crux of kind of everything that transpired with Final Fantasy 15 in the conversion. Oh, I'm down for comrades if you need people for that. Okay, thank you. Because I do think I want to try doing comrades. So um, maybe we will do something. But I want to start here because I think that this is like kind of like the first big thing that FF15 had to go through. So, if we had to basically say what were the core factors that made um, the conversion of Versus to 15, I would say it's these factors. Um, so let me make the font bigger for you guys. The first factor is Versus 13 was multiple games. 15 had to be one. So that's already a restriction, right? And then the second thing I've came to is Versus was planned to have a story centered around a death cult. 15, due to age rating restrictions, could not use this plot. And the third thing is that versus what was I gonna say? Well, just basically 15 had to be finished in an extraordinarily short amount of time. And fourth, the core staff of Versus was removed from 15 with them only loosely being consulted about the change of ideas. I'm sorry, I'm blocking this. Let me move my ass so you guys can see. My apologies. And so these are essentially the four core elements, the crux of why 15 is not Versus in the first place. So starting obviously, 15 was meant to have multiple direct sequels, right? So as far as we know, Final Fantasy 15 was going to be a trilogy under the direction of Tetsuya Nomura. I'm going to refer to it as Versus from here on out, because obviously we're referring to Nomura's original plan, but also to even after the game became 15, it's clear that there was a different original intention here, and he wanted to carry out that intention with Final Fantasy 15. And however, that was not able to come to fruition. So Final Fantasy 15 originally going to have direct sequels for the game, and it was going to be a trilogy, probably something similar to what we're seeing with Final Fantasy 7 re-trilogy right now. So the original article read that Final Fantasy 15 will spawn multiple direct sequels according to the game's director. In an interview with Famitsu via Siliconera, Tetsuya Nomura explained that the plan was to follow in the footsteps of the likes of Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy XIII, creating direct sequels for the game set in the same world. Actually, hold on real quick. I'm gonna have my notes open. I'll keep my notes off screen, but essentially this is gonna make it easier for me whenever I do the video, so that when we're going through this, I can make notes. And by the way, if you guys have any observations, if you have any links that you want to send, I think only the YouTube chat can send them. Please feel free to go ahead and send those, and I can take a look. But there, that way we can read the chat. And I'll move myself over here. So anyway, the fact that he described it as being similar to Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy XIII, we have a pretty good idea that this was probably meant to be a trilogy. And I think it's fairly obvious whenever you go back and look at Final Fantasy 15, I think that you can clearly see three different games that they kind of smushed together narratively. I think that there was supposed to be a game where you kind of like leave Lucis and you go on that road trip across the continent. And then the game was probably supposed to end when you get to Altissia. And then I think there was supposed to be a game where you're traveling across Accordo. And I think that, the kind of game that transpires after that. And then I think that there was supposed to be a third game where you kind of return to Insomnia and, kind of like reclaim your throne. And I think that was the original intention there. Nomura says, in the trailer, there was a line that read, "A world of the Versus epic," which suggests that it'll be part of an epic, he acknowledged. While Final Fantasy 15 will have one climax as a story, we plan to continue it further. So again, a lot of people think that this is 15 universe, but Nomura here, very much clarifies that, like, no, this is not 15 universe. This is going to be something like Final Fantasy X, and then we had 10-2, or the Final Fantasy 13 trilogy. It's not meant to be one game. It's not meant to be like a universe of content like Final Fantasy 15's finished product ended up being. It is certainly meant to be a video game epic in the same way that he's done with Kingdom Hearts, in the same way that they did with Final Fantasy 13, etc. Upon being challenged whether or not fans would have to wait a further 8 years before seeing any of these sequels, Nomura was quick to assert that wouldn't be the case. You know why? Because we wouldn't see any of those sequels. In fact, his response suggests that future games could even be released episodically to keep wait times down. As far as how it will be released, we'll announce that later on. However, you have a wait a long while for the next title isn't something having you wait for a long while for the next title isn't something we would desire, he replied. And so, yeah. Clearly we did not get that. However, let's go on to the next one here. Let's see. I do want to highlight again that I really fucking love this design for Prompto, and I don't hate obviously the Prompto that we got, but I do think that this design was just cooler to me. I love this hair. I think it is just so neat. Yeah, his final design is good, but I just really fucking like this one. Core feels like he definitely changed the most, as if you guys recall, Core was actually meant to be a party member, and he ends up being a guest party member and then kind of never again, right? And then he comes back kind of like in Royal Edition for a little bit, but he was kind of meant to be like a mainstay, and then that just ended up not happening. So this is kind of one of the big things. I think I touched on it. Actually, I don't think I did touch on it in my recent Versus video. But basically, Square Enix had suggested the change from Versus 13 to Final Fantasy 15 2 years after the game's announcement in 2006. And, you know, if you really think about it, that, of course, just makes sense. What Nomura was planning was just so ambitious and so insane. The thought of even making that a spin-off game is just fucking ridiculous. Right? He wanted to do like this big open world, very tech forward game that did all of these things that that they weren't able to do up until this point, that was very forward minded. Obviously, it probably shouldn't have been a spin-off, right? Like, let's be honest, that Versus should have just been Final Fantasy 15 from the start. It should have started out as a mainline entry. And I feel like if it did start out as a mainline entry, it probably wouldn't have gotten shafted in a lot of the ways that it did. But that being said, continuing onward, it was possible the game still retained its original name, but ultimately the decision to change Versus 15 the decision to change it to Final Fantasy 15 was decided when Final Fantasy Agito 13 was renamed Final Fantasy Type 0. Sometimes the timing for such decisions is difficult, but it was publicized after all the department settled on it. The decision to move to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One was made 2 years ago. At the time, it was still expected to be a cross-gen title on PS3 as well. Which is pretty fucking crazy, right? Could you imagine Final Fantasy 15 PlayStation 3 version? Obviously didn't happen. Final Fantasy 15's re-announcement was planned for 2012 but was postponed for various reasons. The lifespan of current generation consoles became a problem. So, yeah. Um, yeah. I did a lot of trial and error on current generation consoles as I wanted to try various things to squeeze too much out of the hardware. That was the inception of switching completely to next gen, which was suggested by the company. He says there were a lot of things I wanted to do and present, so they became my own. So they became my main concern. I wanted to make everything as seamless as possible. Thus, it was necessary to put all of the action into the hardware's memory. All of the character data is persistent. As the player fights a vast amount of diverse enemies on a huge map, it puts a considerable load on memory. Thus, I had to make the choice to switch over to next gen at all costs. I was going to say that, but I don't think it becoming FF15 helped it. It still felt like it was being treated as a spinoff at the time. Well, no, because once it became FF15, it kind of became a company priority, right? But like when it's Final Fantasy versus 13, then it's not like a big deal, right? But like when it's the next mainline number title, then it's a big deal. This is why like Final Fantasy 14 kind of like fumbling the bag when it first came out was something like really important. They just would not approve this amount of budget for a spinoff, right? And that's the real reason why they suggested that Versus become 15. Um, because they're like, if you want to make that kind of game and you want to spend that kind of money, you better be making the next fucking mainline game and not and not like some like thing that most people are going to think is a fucking Final Fantasy 13 spinoff, but actually isn't a Final Fantasy 13 spinoff. It's just like loosely connected to the lore and all that other stuff. Like, why the fuck would I write you a check for $100 million with that kind of plan? You know what I'm saying? So it's very clear to me that that was kind of the intention. I wanted to make an action based Final Fantasy game. I toyed with the idea of switching to a first person point of view and making Noctis the only playable character, and even getting rid of the UI completely. But that would eliminate any resemblance it had to a Final Fantasy game. Kind of an interesting statement. Does only having one playable character make something not really a Final Fantasy game? Anything I want to say, they'll be mad at me. a, fi- a Final Fantasy game has battles with numerical values, damage counters, as in 13 and previous games, we assume. Damage is displayed in numerical values, and the player has to manage HP and 3 playable characters whom he can switch between freely. There is plenty of cooperation, and the player will be aware of the activity of characters outside the party. It seems that all 5 characters fight and travel together, but the party is limited to 3 participants, which of course changed with the switch to next gen, and they were able to put 4 characters and a guest out on the field all at the same time. Thanks to next gen hardware, I can include destruction, warping to high altitudes, and map changing. Yes, although the destruction, as we've seen in the demo, was something that makes the game tank in frame rate to just an absolute chug. I don't recall there being much destruction in the final game. Maybe as we go back through the PC builds, we'll see some destruction, but I think they mostly got rid of it, and the reason is just because it just tanked the fucking frame rate unbelievably so. There's no difference in media storage between PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, as they're both using Blu-ray. The final specs depend on how close the machines can match the original Final Fantasy 15 being developed in DirectX 11. We are using over specification hardware to develop Final Fantasy 15. I can't say how much the final optimized versions will differ yet. Currently, we aren't considering a PC version, but it ultimately depends on demand. Right now, it would take a fairly expensive gaming rig to play the game at full specs, but we will consider it if the demand is high enough. We are developing the game with Luminous Studio and the Team Original sections, and are also using middleware. In the future, there are plans to integrate it into Luminous Studio. Once the game engine was complete, both teams, Final Fantasy 15 and Luminous Engine teams, continued working on the engine while simultaneously developing the game. And this is also where a lot of shit tends to get pretty rough for the game, is that they're also developing an engine. And I mean, do we add that as our fifth point? I'd say we should, as one of the crux, developing an engine while, why am I typing in all caps? Developing an engine while developing a game, which is a huge, I don't want to say problem, but it's something that's really difficult to do. That's the wrong tab. That's the wrong tab. That's the wrong tab. This is the right tab. Okay. Let's keep going. There has been some changes in staff. Hajime Tabata is the co-director, and Takeshi Nozue is the total visual director. Nozue is a member of Visual Works, but we are now developing games together as he is overseeing the visual production. The difference between the real-time scenes and the pre-rendered CG movie scenes is almost negligible. Look development, a technique developed and coined by Visual Works, is used in Final Fantasy 15. It is very similar to Agni's philosophy in that it allows for pre-rendered movies to be produced and dropped into Luminous Studio and played in real time, which is pretty cool. Noctis's level in the E3 2013 trailer is quite high, so he is able to use many weapons and warp freely. Players won't be able to use all those skills from the beginning of the game. The starting point is the Kingdom Hearts series. Simple and exhilarating action feeling. It's not difficult. Most things can be performed intuitively. I am also considering each difficulty level's specific operation procedures. Companions support the player with cooperative attacks and respond to situation with autonomous actions. The battles will be varied. Wait, does that suggest that weapons were tied to levels? So he's able to use... That is an interesting observation, Icefire. You might be right. Because it does say his level is quite high, so he is able to use many weapons and warp freely. Yeah, we know that warping basically still works like that, right? Because the higher your MP is, the more you can kind of warp around. But this basically seems to suggest that maybe the higher your level is, the more weapons you could use at once. Or you could switch weapons, or there was some type of cost to using different weapons. Because if we look at the kind of UI here for the debut of Final Fantasy 15, essentially what we have is, something similar to what we have in the final game. It's actually really interesting because basically they had this system first, and then they had the episode Disguise system, and then it looks like they went back to this system after all. But it looks like here you would shuffle through the different swords. And I really like the kind of design that, how it displays the different weapons. And you almost just sort through them. I imagine maybe using the trigger buttons or something. And that's how things would play out. Autonomous actions, aka bodyguards, will step in to cover the king. Thematic gameplay like KH2's reaction commands. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking too. In Final Fantasy 15, it is possible to free run toward monsters outside of the map, as well as ride on monsters and aim at specific parts of their bodies. There will be flashy situations and boss battles like the Leviathan battle, shown briefly in the trailer, in which it is causing a water tornado and the player is jumping between collapsing buildings. The feeling of speed is important during battle. The player can freely control the character's movements, but spectators, people watching, not people playing, might lose track of what's going on. I'm having trouble with the game's motion. It's simple to make it realistic, but there are still issues occurring. I'm constantly rebalancing the game so it looks realistic and plays well. I wonder what link form would have been. Yeah, I know. I have no fucking idea, right? It's like EX Arts, right? Or X Arts from Versus. No one knows what the fuck that was supposed to be. Part of me just thinks that sometimes Nomura, like during early points of development, he just puts like wacky stuff on these like command menus, and it doesn't even make any fucking sense. Like I'm willing to bet that like the whole build thing in KH4 will be something else entirely. Like it'll just be called something straight up fucking different in the final version of KH4. But that's also kind of just like a common like Square thing, is that the kind of proto UI ends up like not even representing the final thing whatsoever. So this one I had to use like Wayback Machine to even get it to load. It may be kind of slow loading. Maybe link form was an early armature. It might have been. That's actually a really good theory, right? Like maybe it means like linking the weapons together. Maybe that's the intention. I really don't know. Like I legit think a lot of KH3's combat was just Versus 13 stuff recycled into KH existing systems. Yeah, that's why I pointed out in the Undying Legacy of Versus 13 video that I really do think that whole slowdown thing, the option to slow down time basically when you're selecting things from the command menu, I think that was a leftover from Versus, right? And then that idea became the foundation of Final Fantasy VII Remake. But I think that Versus was like the one that came up with that, and then, or not Versus came up with it, but Nomura came up with it for Versus, and then it got implemented obviously into his subsequent games, which basically you could technically say all of his subsequent command action games, right? Because 7R and KH3 and presumably KH4 will also have it. So yeah, so it just seems like yeah. Okay, riding the monsters freely, that didn't really happen unless anyone can name an example, but I don't really think we got to ride any monsters in also I mean, yeah, I feel like that had to be like another crux of what went wrong here. Is that there was just too much ambition. Way too much ambition, right? Like what he's describing here, I do feel like is something I would generally call the ultimate Final Fantasy game, right? Like, if they were able to do all of this and to do the story that they wanted to do and to do all of the things that they had planned, yeah. It did not need Monster Hunter type mechanics for random enemies. Yeah. Yeah. This is why Nomina's visionary, right? I don't know. Actually, maybe I don't know if I'll put this one. Maybe I'll not put that one. But I do think that the level of ambition that they had was just really difficult on them. FF7 was over ambitious. You're right. You're right. I'm gonna remove that one. I think you're fair. We shouldn't punish over ambition. The problem wasn't over ambition. The problem was that the over ambition was being cucked by all of this shit. So I think you're right for vibe checking me on that, Shinobi. I agree with you. Um, Although the game has changed its name and platform, I'm sorry if I just blew your ear off with my laugh, bro. But that's pretty funny. That's going in the notes. That's going in the notes. I'm sorry. Let me make sure I put the link next to that quote. Um, yeah, I'm sorry if I blew your ear off there. If you laugh, you go to hell. And again, that's not even to insult like Final Fantasy 15 story. It's just like so obvious that like that's not the case, right? Um, Again, we're gonna have moments like that here, but like I want to be clear that our goal isn't to like disrespect the final work of like Final Fantasy 15, right? We're not digging FF15 up again to like to have one last laugh at it or anything like that. We're not doing that. Yeah, I'm sure Bastek will be, aka Barry, will be quite upset if we if we go too hard. But obviously, disrespecting the final game here is not really my intention. But obviously, we are going to read stuff, and there are going to be points of frustration, right? I think that is just inevitable with this game. Um, and it's just not, yeah, it's just not going to be, a thing where we can read some of this stuff and not be angry. And I think that's okay. It's okay to be upset about some of this stuff. But I want to be clear that we are doing all this to appreciate the final game of FF15 and to still love it, even though it didn't quite fulfill what our expectations were. Hey NSP, saw your tweet on only a third of Shimamura's work from Versus 13 made it into 15. Think Nomada will reincorporate that music into Verum Rex in the future of Kingdom Hearts? Yes. So, actually, this is something I had wondered about for a long time. So for those of you who don't know, and we'll get around to talking about this, but apparently only a third of Shimamura's music made it into Final Fantasy 15. Or a third of the music that she had completed for Versus made it over into 15. And this is completed music. So she had basically already finished this music. So it's not like she had just wrote it or she had, whatever. This was finished music. And I can't help but think that when they did the Kingdom Hearts 3 secret movie, right? And they made a track that sounds almost exactly like Somnus, right? They made a track that sounds almost Similar to it, exactly. I couldn't help but think, you know, I mean, obviously Nomura had to tell Shimamura, like, you're gonna make a track that sounds just like Somnus, right? But I was thinking, I was like, yo, does Shimamura also kind of, and again, I want to be really careful about not projecting feelings onto um onto these developers and these creatives, right? Because I don't know what they feel. And so this is just like my basic assumption, me imagining how I would feel in that situation and not necessarily how they do. So please don't interpret this as me kind of like, or like this is definitely how they felt or anything like that. But this is just an assessment of that. Certainly you guys are all adults and you can acknowledge that, and we don't have to I don't have to like over labor to explain that I'm not trying to like to just assume these guys feelings outright, and this is just speculation. But I kind of wonder if she has a similar sentiment to Nomura, like whatever that sentiment is, where potentially maybe they felt like um all of this good work that I did for this project has to just die. And my fans will never get to see what I had originally made and all the work that I poured a pretty significant portion of my life into, maybe a decade, into creating. And it just does not get to be it just does not get to be seen, right? And I don't think, obviously, I don't think that like, I don't think she hates 15 or anything crazy like that. So let's not, I don't want to like project that type of thing onto somebody. I want to be really clear about that. But I am saying, I would imagine, at least if it were me, I would still want to get that content out in some capacity. And so what I'm saying essentially is, I imagine that maybe they do have some sort of desire to bring out all this stuff that they created in some form at the very least. Maybe that explains why 15 had so many more composers and arrangers than the normal base games. Something that eventually 7 Remake made standard, yeah. Whether it's just a job or not, it's still her life's work, yeah. In a sense, maybe she is a little salty. I mean, she included Somnus in the end song for KH3. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I bring that up. And I don't want to like, again, I don't want to say for sure that's how she felt, but because we don't know that. And I don't want people to be like, definitely she's like she hella bitter about it. We don't know. We don't even know really how Nomura feels about this, right? We can only speculate. Okay, we do kind of know how Nomura feels about this. We do kind of know. I do feel a little bit more forward in speculating on him, because I do think that he has been like a little bit more obvious about how he generally feels about this whole thing. So I don't think it's as left to the imagination with him. Anyway, Nomura says, according to Nomura, the camera is flawed right now, but will be changed in the final product. He wants to make the camera feel more realistic, as if players are watching the events unfold in front of them. He wants it to feel like someone is recording the events of the game. The team is closing the gap between real-time and pre-rendered scenes, so the final product will look even better than what we see now. Core is a 42-year-old character who wields a katana. In Japan, people of 42-year-olds, people of 42 years are said to attract misfortune at this age. It is called yakudoshi, unlucky age. The redhead male, Arden, and the older male, I'm pretty sure is Idolus, with the sharp glare, are two enemies of Noctis. There are other enemies we have not seen yet. The voice actor of the redhead is Fujiwara Keiji, the same person who did the voice acting for Reno and Axel, both of whom are redheads too. This is the reason this character is redheaded. Nomura admits that the trailer was full of main characters, although he introduced a new female character. The team is looking to expand the game through online content. They are also looking to expand it to the Vita and and tablet. According to Nomura, the game would be a waste of money and time if it only ended after one playthrough being offline. So I guess there was kind of a plan for there was kind of a plan to kind of always make this have some type of online mode. And that did end up happening through Comrades. Rest in peace, Fujiwara. Oh yeah, he did die, huh? And yeah, that's why he wasn't as present in Rebirth. I wonder what they're gonna do with Kingdom Hearts then, if Axel just won't show up anymore. I don't know. FF15 will be present at the Tokyo Game Show and will receive occasional updates through media outlets like Famitsu. Many say that Japanese game development has fallen behind the West. Nomura wants to prove, using Final Fantasy XV, that this won't happen in the next console generation. And, oh my god, Frustrated Jacob, what's up, man? How's it going? Axel ran his course along with like half the cast, but whatever. Yeah, I don't know. Also, you're researching Final Fantasy 15 without me, bro. Actually, I want to have you on for a stream soon. Maybe we can do something if you're free, either like next week or the week after that or something. We can do something together if you're interested. So, Mini say, I just read that one. So let's go on. Let's read like the next big interview thing. I think we're still in 2013. We are still in 2013. Dang, the text is so small here. Maybe can I... Oh, no. Actually, let me see if I... Oops. Well, that just... God damn. Hold on. Is this not mobile? Okay, well, fuck it. You have me reading it. The text is not going to be pretty, but I'm going to read it here. So sorry, your eyeballs are going to have to like go away across the screen in order to read this. Oh, that's right. There was also controversy with Axel's English voice actor too. So yeah, maybe there will just straight up be a recast for both versions. I don't know. In the 2 years following the announcement of Final Fantasy Versus 13, okay, we knew that one. Started thinking about, okay, we knew that one. This is also when we decided to gear the new title toward next-gen productions. When I asked programmers if we could aim the project at next-gen technology as we continued, they said they were one step ahead of the game and showed me clips they had been working on. At this point, I had thought it was conceivable to make a game that was compatible with both the current and next-gen device. If the original plan was to release on PlayStation 3 as well, what changed? We were actually planning our platform choices last year, but various issues and delays arose. This, plus the fact that lifespans of current generation systems were growing short, proved to be problematic. In the year we were making our announcement, next-gen research had continued, and current gen wasn't looked upon so well anymore. It became difficult to announce that we wanted to continue work with current gen technology. While we were trying to make the release before the next gen wave, the ultimate push to upgrade came from the company who didn't want us to work with our hands tied in the current generation. Um, what are some of the things you wanted to do to that lead to the shift? Wait, what the fuck? What are some of the things that you wanted to do to that lead to the shift? That led to the shift. I'm sorry. Fuck English. What are some of the things you wanted to do that led to the shift? We wanted to make Final Fantasy 15 the most seamless experience we could. This meant we needed a lot of memory space for all the actions taking place in the game. Diverse weapons, various actions of your party, magic, and not to mention the enormous map and great variety of enemies to fight. All those things take up a huge amount of data. There are also lighting effects, game physics, and the enormous map and great variety of enemies to fight. All of these things take up a huge amount of data. Wait, I'm sorry, I can't read. I'm illiterate. There's all in the enormous map and enemies to fight. All these things take. It's so hard to read this. Hold on. Because of how zoomed out it is. Lighting effects, game physics, filter, which require resources. And in order to make a viable game, decisions must be made to accommodate all of these players. You know what? There's an easier fucking way to do this. Easier fucking way to do this. Oh, wait. But then I can't. Here we go. Here's what we'll do. Because I am struggling to read it like this. And it is driving me. Will that not get rid of all the fucking black text? Or white. Oh my god. We'll just do it like this. And then. Okay. Yeah, no, I didn't want to like paste without formatting because then I'd get rid of the bullet points. Okay. There we go. This is so much easier to read. There's also lighting effects, game physics, and filters, which require resources, and in order to make a viable game, decisions must be made to accommodate all these factors. In reducing the amount of data and memory needed to make this game, was producing an FPS not considered? Although we were promoting Final Fantasy as an action game, we didn't think about working on an FPS. We thought about getting rid of the UI and throwing away the damage point display system of previous games and making, that was covered in the other interview. What is a Final Fantasy game? In terms of battle system, Final Fantasy means using a party of characters to fight based on numeric point values. You manage things like hit points, damage points, and recovering points while battling. You consider the numbers. In Final Fantasy 15, you'll be able to control 3 different characters while fighting. In addition to your main party characters, we're also implementing control over other characters you encounter. In Final Fantasy 15 trailer at E3 2013, you saw Noctis warping and fighting in a large arena. We are developing battle arenas like that where you can move freely around but still in a Final Fantasy-esque fighting style. If we had continued to work with current gen technology, what we have now wouldn't have been nearly as sophisticated. We really wanted to implement damage and changes made to the world map. PlayStation 3 was originally meant to be a home entertainment system, but thanks to the implementation of DirectX 11, we no longer have to worry about the system model and can fully start making full spec development before choosing the hardware and platform that best fits the game we wish to create. The original Final Fantasy 15 works on some pretty high specs, and whether the game will work on a system depends on the hardware it uses. In other words, if a system comes out that can support FF15, we'll consider releasing a version for that system. Developing games in this way has been unheard of until now. What sort of differences can we expect to see between the original design and the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One versions? I'm hearing that both systems are adequately equipped to handle Final Fantasy 15, but how close they come to the original game design depends on the hardware. At any rate, there's not too much I can say about this right now. Will we see it developed for PC? You need a powerful PC for it. Have you been making use of Luminous Studio? At our E3 2013 exhibition, we displayed samples from Luminous Studio. We plan to integrate with Luminous Studio and developing it alongside other projects. Once the game engine is complete, it's safe to say that game development will follow. It's difficult to build a game engine without a concrete idea of what it'll be used for. This is why we're having the Luminous team work side by side with the FF15 team to build the engine. Imagine if FF15 pulled a Persona 5 and was on PS3 and Xbox 360. We would have seen a Switch 1 version back in 2017 and 18. Yeah, we actually probably would have, which would have been kind of fucking crazy to think. I'm really glad that they did not make the PS3 version, because I couldn't even imagine that thing. It would just not even run. The visual works using look development. That's been reiterated on. Example in the trailer scene with the whirlwind. Okay, a lot of that just kind of iterates on. There was some other stuff in here. Characters are male. I think that's pretty much it. There's nothing else too big in there. Let's see, what was this one? I don't even think I read this one before stream. Let's see, because the first half of this is about Kingdom Hearts, and so I guess, yeah, this is the start of the FF15 talk. So let's take a look at that. Let me zoom in so you guys can see it better. I kind of want to read this part, even though it doesn't have anything to do with 15 directly. But it's this quote right here, where Nomura says, "I watch a lot of movies. I mean a lot. Normally like 2 or 3 films a day. It's my pace. I watch quite a lot, so I don't always remember the names or the titles even. So I watch, then I get inspiration from films and stuff, and I can't name the actual titles of the movies that actually inspire me to create games. But when I'm watching movies sometimes, I feel like, oh, that's nice, or that's good, something like that." Bro, literally, where does he even have the time? Directing like 3 games in a row. ADHD behavior. I mean, kind of. How does he even have the time? Dude, I watch like 1 episode of something with my meal every night, but that's it. An episode. But bro is watching like 2 or 3 films a day. And like, as busy as he is, that's just fucking crazy. Yeah, we're talking about films, right? So we're talking bare minimum 90 minutes, but probably more. So like, what the fuck? Nomura-san, your character outfits are more and more detailed. When we saw Cloud for the first time in 97 and now Noctis in 2013, there's a lot of greatness in them. Have you received some fashion lessons, or do you just follow fashion? Obviously, I always think about the current trend in fashion and everything when I create characters, but this time, for 15, Noctis and all main characters have been revealed. This time, we actually asked for a professional brand to create the outfits. We also have the actual clothes in the office, so our CG team and all the teams can actually see the clothes with their own eyes to create the exact image in the game. And that's really easier because when I created the characters, all the CG team and all of our current development team always ask me, is this leather? Is this cotton? Is this nylon? How many percentage? Da 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 da. That's a lot of detailed questions, so it's always difficult to be precise about what kind of textures are the clothes made of and stuff like that. So that's why this time we had the actual clothes made, and then we take it from there and put it in the actual game, which is actually pretty cool. I think it's like really cool that they did it. Watching sounds like a lot. I have one in the background after I go back to my apartment and start answering emails I missed while in the office. That's probably, I mean, it has to be, bro. It like literally has to be. Nobody could actually consume that many films a day and work a full-time job, much less a full-time job that is demanding as his. So I assume that he just kind of like passively pays attention to them and not actively. um Nomura-san, you work on a lot of projects like Final Fantasy 15, the Kingdom Hearts saga, The World Ends With You. How do you manage all the projects you have at the same time? Actually, I am not very good at managing myself, especially managing lots of different projects. But because of my staff and all the staffs are very, very intelligent, very good, and very capable, I'm able to run all the different projects at the same time. And most important are the co-directors in each project. Again, they are very capable and very skilled people. They are the people actually managing the actual everyday job on the ground. That's why I'm here. They are supporting me all the time. Self-awareness, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's not the guy that is usually like deeply directing the games, right? Like he is usually more of like a lead visionary, and he's kind of like telling the director what to do. So a lot of times when you see directed by him, he's still kind of like having a co-director actually fulfill his plans. And that's kind of how Tabata took over for him after 15, went its own direction. And they had to have him finish Kingdom Hearts 3 and get working on Final Fantasy 7 Remake. You've created a lot of characters for the FF series. What's your favorite character between all those you've created? If I had to choose a favorite character, I would say Sora and Noctis. Why them? Of course, Sora, I've been together with him for more than 10 years now. This is the first time I've been with a character for such a long time. He's very, very special to me, and he's been adopted by Disney also, and he's a very, very good boy, more like a good son. Also, there is Noctis. He hasn't been in front of you, I mean, moving, etc., in real gameplay, but he will be soon in the future. Do you know the name Sora means sky in Japanese? And Noctis, his family name is Kylum, which means sky as well. So basically, Noctis means night sky. So they are kind of complete opposites to each other. There is a reason I named these characters as opposites. Noctis is kind of like my latest boy, our latest son, and I expect him to be more clever than Cloud. That sentence is still felt to this day, yeah. We still think about that. Mark, like my son down. This will be important later. Well, yeah, dude, they stole his son from him. So what did he do? He made another copy of his son. And then he took his son Riku and told him to dress like his other son. The one who died. Okay. One question, Nomada, very important for us, for Hideo Kojima, because Hideo Kojima said he'd love a remake of Final Fantasy VII. What about you? Would you like to play a Metal Gear Solid 1 remake? To play? Yes, to play. Of course. I'd like it if he were, of course I'd like it if he were going to do a Metal Gear Solid remake. Crazy. That is kind of crazy. That is kind of crazy. I wonder if Kojima has played fucking Final Fantasy VII Remake now that you mention it. Because, I mean, Kojima apparently said he'd love to see a remake of FF7. Did he play Remake? Does anyone know? He bought Rebirth? Oh no. Did he just say purchased Rebirth? And then that was it? Because if so, we're cooked. Man, this interview is from such a different world. I know. I know, bro. Bro, it's like when you go back and like read this, like it's so hard to believe that like shit is like happening in the way that it is. I'm telling you guys, this is not the canon timeline. I think we're in the dark timeline that wasn't supposed to happen. And I'm not sure like when it got that way. And I don't just mean Final Fantasy 15 and the fact that we didn't get verses or whatever, but I mean that there are just so many different things that have happened over like the past few years, and it's just like, I mean, in Square, outside of Square, we're definitely in the dark fucking timeline. We diverged, man. We diverged. You know what? I really do think that like maybe like if I had to pick a year that we diverged from the canon timeline, I would say it's like 2016. I think that's when we started to get away from the canon timeline. Okay, Kojima purchased Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Cool. But then we don't know anything else after that. We don't know if he played it or not. That's pretty cool. I'm glad that thread happened. Um, what do you think about the differences between Fox Engine and your own Luminous engine? I know they meant well by this question, but like this is really not the question to ask like anyone who's not like a technical director, but also even if you're not like even if you are a technical guy, you really can't even answer this question if unless you intimately use the engine to create something yourself, right? Like um this is kind of like asking someone like, hey, can you tell me the difference between like Unity and Unreal? And like unless you use both, you really don't intimately know the details. But like at least Unity and Unreal, those are like public engines, right, that people can download and you can find thousands upon thousands of pieces of documentation on. Whereas like with oh shit, Xbox news, Phil and Sarah retiring. Holy shit. That is fucking crazy. Xbox is so Jover, bro. It's so fucking Jover for Xbox. I mean, it's been Jover, but like, it, it's like Jover 2 Final Mix, bro. Like every time I think Xbox can't be more over, they're like, we're erasing Xbox from the timeline. Phil's retiring? What? Dude, I know. I really do think that I really do think that the next Xbox announcement is going to be that Xbox will no longer exist throughout the multiverse. Like they're like literally pulling it out. All of your memories of Xbox will be deleted. Like that's how over like Xbox is at this point. Like you can't even remember Xbox anymore. It's like it's that fucking cooked, man. That Xbox Mini video I have been wavering on for making for the last year and a half is officially back in production. I do think like a good death of Xbox essay video, Jacob, is like highly due. if not overdue. But I think that this is like the final nail in the coffin to be like, yo, now we need to seriously discuss like the death of Xbox. Anyways, he says that the engines are different. I mean, and that's all he could to say. I think Fox Engine and Luminous Engine are totally different because they got each different kinds of different abilities and skills and stuff that we could use in a game. Right. I mean, that's the kind of answer I expect. That's not even a question worth reading. A Final Fantasy 15 question. What should we expect in terms of vehicles? Can we pilot airships and explore the world of Final Fantasy 15 and discover its secrets? We don't have any big plans for different types of vehicles and stuff like that. There's one you saw in a recent trailer, of course. Well, two things you can probably use. First, the car. The car is going to be the vehicle you'll probably use most of the game. The other one, the Magitech armor. You can actually control and ride Magitech armor as well. In a future reveal, you'll probably find more. Yeah, that was not the case. That Xbox video oh wait, I just read that. Fucking stupid. Why is my Twitch chat not refreshing? Why is it not refreshing? Or is it refreshing? I don't fucking know. Wait, there we go. That was the last. Oh, okay. Y'all were just so quiet. I thought y'all had died. My bad. A motorbike, laughs in Final Fantasy 15. I read that as laughs in Final Fantasy. Laughs in Final Fantasy 15. You play as a party. You're always with your friends. So 5 guys riding a motorbike together. I'm not sure if this would work. In a gang like Kadaj, Lowe's, and Yazoo. Yeah, maybe it doesn't look very good in a game. Why did you change Stella's design and make her look so much younger? Is it because of the story development, or is it because of you made a survey with the audience? There is no specific reason behind it. We didn't want to make her look younger. We just wanted to make her look a little prettier. That's all. Also, she didn't look younger in that trailer. Like, what the fuck is he talking about? She looks different for sure. She really didn't look any younger than she did previously. So I don't know what the fuck they're saying. I don't know if I agree with that. But in 2007, she was very nice. She's very nice and still pretty, but she's still a little younger. Like, no, what the fuck are you talking about? Hold on. Well, let's pull this up. Because I literally don't understand why the fuck he is saying this. And this is baffling the shit out of me. And let me pull up a render of her. What the fuck is he? She looks the fucking. I mean, she doesn't look the same, but it's not like she like. But like, he is saying that like she went from like looking like 30 to like 15. And like, I just don't agree. Like, it's definitely a different face model, but it's not like, I don't really agree with that. Rounder face, I guess, yeah, but it's not like they de-aged her, which is kind of like what the interviewer seemed to be implying. I don't agree with that. But anyway, she's whiter? No, I think it's just the lighting, if you mean like in terms of her skin paleness. They're both low 20s. Yeah, I would say she looks about like 20 to 22 in both. Um, maybe like 24, but like it's not like she looks like it's not like an age difference to me between the two models. Um, but she's still a little younger. When I created Stella back in 2007, I actually created something that's maybe not my type of character. Obviously, time has passed since then, about 6 years now, and then she actually has become something that I quite like now. Rip. In the trailer, we could briefly see Noctis with red eyes. Well, red eyes give him some sort of special power during battles. In the last promotion trailer, Noctis got red eyes because he got the ability of teleportation. So that's why when he did that, his eyes got red. Actually, Visualworks created the trailer back then in 2007. When you actually play the game, you can't really see and zoom in the face of the character anyway. And he moves very fast as well, so if the character's face is actually seen in a zoomed in on the screen, the fuck is his wording? We probably could still make his eyes red, but we haven't decided whether we're going to need the red eyes or not. Well, the problem with the red eyes is that there would be no way to fucking see them during gameplay, right? So I think that's why they mostly just restricted them to when he summons. Because, yeah, there's just no way to actually see the eyes during gameplay, so... The game looks very serious and fatalist. Have you planned to add sort of fun moments or funny mini games? We are actually thinking to have some sort of fun elements in the game. But for the moment, the priority is to create the main game itself. I will add or not add stuff like that depending on how the game development or how the development of the main game goes, but we are thinking about that. About the artistic direction of the game. The appearance of the Kingdom of Lucius is much like the Shinjuku district in Tokyo and Accordo and has the same feeling of Venice in Italy. Can we hope to see someplace inspired by the French region, perhaps? Paris, perhaps? Well, do you have any games actually based in Paris? Oh, shit. 10 years too early. 12 years too early, chat. 12 years too early. Deadling City from Final Fantasy VIII with Arcade. I don't know how to actually pronounce it right. If we used it before, we might not want to use it in a new game. So I'm not sure about using Paris. In my opinion, in a lot of RPG games, there are many European motives. Motives? Does he mean like motifs, or do I not know English? I don't know. European things or European motives? Oh, he does mean European motives. Or maybe he means European motifs. I'm pretty sure, yeah, he means European motifs, right, chat? Okay, you guys agree. Okay. European motifs, European things, cities, and stuff where your characters live and play. But you guys still think you need more European things or French things? I'm sorry. Okay. This whole thing is so fucking funny. I'm sorry, I can't stop laughing. First of all, the typo European motives is like really funny. What is a European motive? The absolute urge to manifest destiny. I don't know. What's a European motive, bro? Like, that as a typo just like is sending me so hard. But then also like the clapback here is like is insane. Universal healthcare, yeah. Driving on the wrong side of the road. European motive. A European motive is buying oil from a company you're also fighting a proxy war against, or a country you're also fighting a proxy war against. Holy shit, that's funny. European motives. Oh man, that's so fucking funny. Um, I'm trying to stop laughing about that, but I really can't. Um, but also like I really do think it's funny. Like Nomada here, like, don't y'all have enough? Aren't you Europeans satisfied by this? It's like it's so funny. It's so funny. Um this is also why I like Final Fantasy X though, is because there are a lot of like European like high fantasy games, right? And so I do think that like Final Fantasy X is kind of unique in that way. And then 15 also, I mean, especially Versus was kind of pulling from like a lot of Japanese inspiration. And so yeah, he's right. There is plenty of Western European um games and influence and in media. And so it's kind of like there are actually plenty of stuff. We don't even get Eastern European stuff that often. I think like the biggest maybe Eastern European thing that we got is The Witcher. So yeah, if people want to do more European stuff, I would really prefer if they start using like Eastern European culture as more of an influence, because I think there's like a lot of untapped potential there, especially like I think like maybe like Russian culture and architecture would be like really interesting in a video game, which again is something that we didn't know. We'd love to see that in a Final Fantasy. We are sure it'd be very nice. Well, we'll think about that. That's all I could say. Dude, there's so many typos here. We'll think about that. We'll think about that. That's funny. Thank you very much. We need more African slash South Asian bases. I'm like really surprised that South Asia is not more used, especially in games. Like it's kind of like mind blowing. Um, because South Asia is so like I mean, there's so much richness and culture there. Africa too, obviously, but especially like for considering that you have like um, Japan being so close or a lot closer than say we are, that they haven't tried to like uh, take too much from there. Um, of course, Final Fantasy X again really did have a lot of Southeast Asian inspiration. I really want an Afrofuturism inspired RPG. Yeah, I thought so too. I think also, I mean, speaking of that, I think it would have been like really cool if, like, again, if they took the concept of Agni's philosophy and it was kind of like Southeast Asia, like, kind of like maybe spanning up to like Northeast Africa and that like kind of area in particular. If we got like a Final Fantasy game that was based on those particular cultures, different nations, kind of like representing those different cultures, that would be so fucking cool. And I think that like the concept of Agni's philosophy would have been like the perfect time and place for something like that. But probably not going to happen now. Um, we've seen a lot of male characters with Noctis and his friends. Is there going to be girls as playable characters as well? I can't say anything specific now, but it would be quite difficult to have a girl playable. Question about this place we are in, Japan Expo. There are more than 200,000 people there, loving Japanese culture so much. We actually watched the anime in original version, and we wanted to watch Advent Children Complete only in Japanese. Can we hope to get the original Japanese voices for Final Fantasy 15 in Europe? That all depends on the capacity of the disc. The main two reasons are the disc space and also the lip sync. If we're making the game with the characters speak in English but with the voices in Japanese, the lip sync would not match much. Even though you'd prefer having the Japanese voices? Yes, actually, we have a solution for you. Can you think of a limited edition with only Japanese voices and French text? Would it be possible to do that? You really want this that much? Yes, yes, yes. We really want Japanese voices. You'll have to say yes, yes, yes to Square Enix though, for not to me. What the fuck? Who translated this shit? If you guys really want that kind of a request very much from all the fans and all the community side and everything, it'd probably be best to tell Square Enix France or Square Enix Europe to make that happen. Square Enix France of Europe could speak to Square Enix Japan, and it could probably actually make it happen, but we'll see. Is it game over if Noctis dies? At some time, I said it's going to be game over when Noctis died, but we were talking about Versus 13. But now as Versus 13 became 15, we haven't decided actually, so we can't really say if it's going to change or not. We'll see. We'll be able to customize weapons and equipment of our characters. Sorry, we can't say anything about that yet. Not heavily involved in the Dissidia, Irenia. What will the addition of Hajime Tabata, the great producer of Final Fantasy Type 0, bring to the 15 team? The reason we're bringing, the reason we bringed, what the fuck, this had to be machine translated. This had to be. The reason we bringed Tabata-san into the team is because he always said to me that okay, fuck this, guys. I'm not going to read this shit exact. I'm going to interpretively read it. The reason why we brought Tabata-san onto the team is because he always said to me that he wanted to bring the Final Fantasy 15 project, wanted to join the Final Fantasy 15 project. I asked him to join the team. His vitality and mentality are always motivated and very high. In the future campaign, until the game is out, Tabata-san will bring... What the fuck is going on with this? Oh, God, dude. Holy fuck. And, you know, this is how bad, like, that translators used to be, especially for Japanese. For maybe people who, I mean, all of you guys remember, but like machine translation for Japanese is actually like pretty okay now. Especially like LLM translations, but like before that, like translations for Japanese were like machine translations were basically fucking worthless. They were so bad. They were like literally unusable in most cases. And so it was just... it was just so bad, and I just it really does make reading this really difficult. I remember a lot of bad translation work like this when I was reading interviews back in the day. There was stuff I basically threw out when I was prepping FF15 videos because it was written like this and I didn't trust it right. And a lot of this stuff, like, it's actually pretty pivotal, you know? It's like, it's stuff that like you straight up can't even use it. And I hate that the original Japanese transcripts aren't made available for this stuff, because now we just never really know some of the stuff that was actually said. And worse, this also makes it difficult for Japanese fans even, right? Because a lot of these interviews, they do say stuff for that only appears in like, kind of like a Western media thing in like some interview. And then they don't even have access to, the original Japanese unless they go back and like they say it again in like a Famitsu interview or something like that. So, but I've seen Japanese videos and stuff, like Final Fantasy videos, where they will reference a Western interview in English and then have to translate it back to Japanese. And I'm thinking, holy shit. So I do think it'd be great if, like, all this stuff would get transcriptions, but obviously people don't have it after all these years and years and years. So yeah, it's just tough. It's really tough. And Japanese and English couldn't be further apart as languages. And that also makes things just way more difficult. The reason, yeah, so his vitality are always motivated and very high. So yeah, he's very high every time he shows up to work, guys. He shows up and he's very high and very motivated. In the future, the campaign and until the game is out, Tabata-san will be going to speak in front of you guys and more often, speak in front of you guys more often. So please ask him in detail when he's available. Nomura-san, can we imagine you'll work on Final Fantasy 15 too, just after finishing the first one? Obviously, we haven't decided yet. We don't have any concrete plan for a future sequel of FF15. It would be good if we could do that, but we can't announce it or say anything in detail for the moment. So for future information. So wait for future informations. Okay. Last question, Nomura-san. It's the first time we saw you with the fan communities in France. We are very happy to see you. Do you think that you'll come again next time? Day, no. He basically stopped showing up in person like pretty much after this, I think, right? Like this is kind of like around the time where he kind of just stopped making in-person appearances, and now after this he's just a disembodied voice. Of course I'd love to come again, but other people working on my project obviously want to come to meet the fans and meet you guys as well. So we're gonna decide depending on what kind of event or opportunity we'll have in the future. You guys definitely want to see the same face every year or so. We'll see about that. We always see Kitase-san and Toriyama-san, Hashimoto-san too. We saw them every year for Final Fantasy 13, 13-2, Lightning Returns. I saw Shinji Hashimoto in 2010, and we talked about Versus 13, and we talked about teleportation in the game, and he said, I don't know if Nomura-san will do that. And now we actually see it in the game, and it's just amazing. Thank you very much. Came here a day. Crazy to think he was promoting Cage 1.5 at this time. I don't want to diagnose him, but he always had a different vibe, even from other Japanese devs interviews. Yeah, he's always been very distant. And this is actually something I've come to admire about him now in a weird way. Like, maybe much more so as a content creator and like kind of like understanding what it's like to wake up every day and see people just being like literally fucking insane about like the works that you've created. And I don't mean necessarily in like a, oh my God, I love what you created, that kind of way. I mean like people just saying like fucking insane things and like all you want to do is just draw things and like make cool stuff. But like you always have to deal with the weight of the whole fucking internet, which is kind of a lot for your brain to process, right? Like in our brains and the way we evolved, kind of ostracization from the tribe is like the biggest fear in the human mind, right? Like it's the only thing that we would probably put on par with our fear of death is to be ostracized from our tribe. But thanks to the internet, we have an even more insane fear. You can technically now be ostracized from all tribes ever, right? That's like an actual theoretical possibility now that our brains can't even like comprehend um, a level of like social rejection that like is just almost impossible to even like understand by us. But we know that we're all kind of afraid of that. No one wants to wake up and be the main character of the internet. It's like the most horrifying thing that you can possibly imagine. Right? No one wants to be the guy on the headline that people are like really discussing. Yeah, like true alienation, like from the entire world. Um, in some ways, kind of a fate worse than death, right? But that is kind of what being a creator in the modern world is. Like every time you create something, you're kind of putting yourself out there to be rejected by all of humanity, right? You may get picked up by some political commentator, for example, and this happens on both sides, by the way. But you may be picked up by someone who wants to make some political point about your game, be them left wing or right wing, etc. And then they just want to make like a hit piece about you. And this happens all the time where they want to make, some type of thing out of anything that you said or you did. And then they weaponize it. And before you know it, you have all these people that at your doorstep hating you. And this happens all the time now. And kind of has been, escalating for years and years now. But it's to the point of where you really can't create anything now without making people mad. No matter how innocent or like inoffensive you try to make something, especially here in the West, obviously, where it's just way more divisive and such. Anything you do, one faction or the other will be really upset by it and be like, this is like, this is not good. This is terrible. This is the worst. And it's just really unfortunate because it means that as a creator, you really can't just create now. Even if you don't have any type of like, weird intention, those intentions will be projected onto you, whether you want them to be or not. And so all of this is really to say that I've come to have a great deal of admiration for Nomina because, I've always had admiration for him, but in this specific case, like just being like, fuck you guys. I'm not going to make a Twitter account. I'm not going to like read this fucking insanity every day. I'm not going to like interact with this bullshit. I'm going to be above it. Respect, man. It's a big issue in Japanese fan bases too, to be honest. Japanese fans are aggressive, so I get why he doesn't use the internet, right? And yeah, dude, it's like fuck it. I do not blame him one bit. As someone who looks at responses to Japanese creatives in different mediums, right? Like, dang, bro, it's so crazy because just think about it, right? Like, I just really want you guys to think about this stuff. Like, sometimes people are just like writing a book or, making a manga or like doing whatever. And then they wake up and they have fucking death threats. And people are telling them to like keep themselves safe over like like fucking like creative decisions. And it's just like, damn, dog, I'm just trying to make things that I hope make you happy. And that's not to say that like you can never be critical of art, obviously, or like you can never like you can never like say like, hey, this wasn't that good, what's going on, or like anything like that. Obviously I think you should be able to criticize art, but like the craziness that sometimes follows it is like utterly absurd, to the point of where I sometimes think like, why do people even want to create shit anymore? Why even do it? Learning that Nomura had heard the moaning about belts and zippers and whatnot, and his response was double down, significantly increased my already considerable respect for him. Yeah, I know. I agree, bro. I agree, and that's also why, um, that's also why I think it's just it's great for him to have less contact. Good for your mental health. Being critical and being a bitch are two very different things, and many conflate the two for some reason. I mean, we saw that with like the Max clip on Twitter, where Max was saying like, "Hey, it's better to have constructive criticism versus destructive criticism, because constructive criticism gets heard more frequently and responded to more frequently, and destructive criticism doesn't." And then somehow people took that and said, and they were like, "You are trying to silence us. You are trying to silence us, silence our criticism." And I'm like, dang, that is definitely not what he fucking said. But I've also, and not to get like too far out of scope here, but I was like listening to this video the other day, and they were talking about how like Gen Z is like the first generation to display like basically like lesser cognitive capability than the preceding generation. So basically they were saying that Gen Z on average is less smarter, is like less smarter, less intelligent on average than millennials, right? And apparently, because before this, it had been that each generation is like slightly more intelligent than the previous generation, right? But Gen Z is like the first one to be worse cognitively on like basically like on things like attention and memory and things like that. And the reason is because social media, right? So around 2010, when platforms like Facebook was really taking off, Instagram was taking off, a ton of social media platforms were really starting to take off at that time. That is essentially when attention span, memory, and all these different cognitive functions began to go on the downslope, right? And if you're a millennial, you're lucky enough to have gotten those things introduced to you later in life, but you kind of formed your brain without those things being like baked in, right? But yeah, now brain rot is like kind of baked into your upbringing, right? So if you're growing up right now, you've basically never been alive without having exposure to brain rot, without having exposure to like endless feeds and stuff like that, right? So yeah, this is why I'm all for these attempts at social media bans. If we have data that shows giving a child an iPad does similar things to their brain as giving them drugs, then it should be a controlled substance. Yeah, 100%. 100%. I bring up this point though to highlight that the next time you see someone on Twitter and they are saying something fucking insane to you, a lot of those times, those people quite literally can't fucking read. Like, and I'm not even like, like literally, or they have like very bad reading comprehension, which is kind of a byproduct of social media, is that actually that reading comprehension goes down because again, attention and memory are also going down, right? And so like half of these people that are like so insane and they're saying things that like you can't believe a person is saying it, there's like probably three situations that are happening. One, they are probably they're probably trolling and they're monetized and they get paid for it. Two, they might just be a bot. They're not even a real person they're just like, again, plugged in to basically engagement bait and make money. Or the third option is that they are a real person, but they just don't have the comprehension skills to understand what you're getting across or to be civil, right? On the internet. And so we're kind of like lowering standards across the board because we're all getting way fucking dumber. And social media is making us way fucking stupid. It's making us stupid and it's kind of making us hostile too, right? Like, if you were talking to someone in real life and they were like, oh, I like this Final Fantasy. And then your friend was like, dang, I hated that shit. You would just be like, you talk about it. You'd be like, dang, why you hate it? That thing is so cool. And then you'd have a real conversation, like a normal as like group of people. But by the end of it, your friendship wouldn't be like over, right? You joke about it. You talk about like what things hit for you, what didn't. You might take a few jabs at them in like, you know, in lightness, but it wouldn't be a big deal, right? But on social media, it's like you see someone who doesn't like something that you like, and it's like we need to like we need to do something like um I guess what I'm trying to say is that the reaction is just not the way people would have a reaction in real life or like realistically, right? But we keep reinforcing those behaviors and those type of interactions. I just would never like make someone my enemy because they liked some game that I didn't like, or like they didn't like some game I don't like. Some of my Twitter mutuals even like they hate games that I like, and I hate some of the games they like. But I still think they're pretty cool people because we discuss it civilly. But yeah, Aaron Hansen just made a huge post about how he was deliberately over the top angry in his old sequelitis videos for comedic effect, and how people still take it seriously to this day. He blames himself, but I sure don't. Yeah. No, people, bro, it's fucking crazy. The Plinkett reviews really stand out to me. The joke back in the day was, who cares about Star Wars enough to talk angry about it for 2 hours? A psychopath. That too. Now people who talk about Star Wars and say, I want Kathy Kennedy to blank, and they mean it. Yeah. Yeah, no, dude. Like, for sure. Like, that is like real shit. That is like real shit. Like, for me, like, all of this stuff is just kind of like, I just think it's like fun discussing it, but like there are people that I think hate me and want me dead just because like their main criticism of me like as a creator are just that I didn't like X game or that I do like Y game. And I just think that's like that's like fucking like mental to me. Because I mean, like, obviously, you know, you may want to surround yourself or pay more attention to like creators and stuff you'd agree with, but I never think while listening to someone that I hate them. But there is like, I mean, like, for example, there's this one guy on Twitter. He fucking hates me. He hates me so much. And every time I post, this motherfucker shows up and he's like, and I don't block him because I don't know why I don't block him. But it feels like giving them a victory. If you block people, they're just like, they just post a screenshot and they're like, I blocked you. You know? Or you blocked me. So I win. Lol, look how weak you are. So you can't even block these motherfuckers because then them and their ghouls will be like, we won. We were so annoying that you had to click a button to stop seeing us. Like, wow, you really fucking won. but it's crazy. So no, I don't blame Nomada for not showing up. I don't blame him. I used to be like, fuck, I wish he would like show up, show his face. I wish he would like do community stuff. Now I'm like, bro, don't fucking show up. Don't fucking show up. Don't dignify. Don't dignify these people. These people don't fucking deserve you. You create the things you want to create, and you release them. Don't look at the comments. Don't look at what people are saying, and that's good. My favorite comment I ever got was, "This low life doesn't know a thing about Kingdom Hearts." I almost made it my Twitter headline back, Twitter header back in the day. No, you should have. You should have. Also, I love the implication that you're a low life because you don't know a thing about Kingdom Hearts. That's so fucking funny to me. That's so fucking hilarious. That is so hilarious. Like, that one statement tells me everything I could ever know about the person who wrote that and their romantic life. Like, I know what's going on, or I should say, not going on, just from the fact that you wrote that sentence in earnest. Like, holy fuck. That's crazy, dog. Like, what the fuck? Let's move on to the next thing. But that was a very important rant because I've just been thinking about that lately, and I have to get that like off of my shoulders because I just think that like um I think that there are great spaces on the internet. I think that there is goodness in social media. I think our community is one of those good places. Like, we have like a lot of like, honestly, I just feel like most of the sane Final Fantasy community is a really good place to be at, right? Most of you are like really cool. And then like you go like a little too deep into it, and then you start finding questionable um statements and takes and stuff. Um so let's read this one. The recently revealed Final Fantasy 15 discuss future plans. For to begin with, many have wondered about any significant meaning behind the end of the trailer when it was quoted, "The world is ever changing for the 15th coming," if it has anything to do with the story of the game. According to Nomada, this quote isn't part of the game, and it was just a line they made for the trailer alone. It won't have anything to do with the story or characters. Nomura briefly touched upon the nature of the game's story and its battle system. Both are different from past Final Fantasy games, and this is the result of starting out as Versus 13. That said, while the game has been rebranded to Final Fantasy 15, the idea behind having a different story and action-based system has not. Nomura says he had to confirm that this would be okay during the talks of the game being rebranded as Final Fantasy 15. After being told it wouldn't be a problem, things went ahead as planned. Okay, let me screenshot that for my notes. Because that's, if you laugh, you go to hell, chat. If you laugh, you go to hell. Because that is not what fucking happened at all. That is not what happened. Holy shit, that is not what happened. Dang. That is so not what fucking happened. Oh my god. Dang, bro. Okay, hold on real quick, chat. Real quick, chat. I need to go to the bathroom and we'll finish reading this. Give me 1 second. Okay, we're back. Uh, no, I don't think it is that Nomina lied. Um, I think it's that the execs lied to him. That's what this sounds like to me. I'm not pulling up that Nomina lied. This is Square Enix execs. Damn boy, you piss fast as fuck. I sure do. I'm a speed pisser. Um, Additionally, while Square Enix may have hinted in the week earlier that Final Fantasy 15 may have sequels or follow-up games in the future that continue the story, Nomina clearly confirms that this will indeed be the case. In the trailer, there was a line that read, "A world of the versus epic," which suggests that it'll be part of an epic, while Final Fantasy 15 will have one climax, blah, 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 blah. Nomina says it would make it easier for him and the rest of the team to develop freely without having to worry about the story and contents fitting into just one game. Oh man. Okay. That's also going in the notes. Okay, I put that in the notes. That said, if Final Fantasy 15 is to become a continuous series, players may expect subsequent games to release in a shorter span, similar to the Final Fantasy 13 series. Famitsu asked Nomina to weigh in on the subject. As for how it will release, we'll announce that later on. However, having you wait a long time for the next title isn't something we would desire, Nomina replies. Also, we've been exploring online compatibility ever since the shift toward the next-gen hardware was decided. Comrades was something that was always part of the plan. That's for sure. That is for sure. They have mentioned online compatibility a lot. Roy Mustang, thank you so much for this super chat. If the version of 15 that came out in 2016 non-royal edition was as terrible as it was, how awful do you think Nomina's version of the game was? I'm not sure what you mean. Because his version of the game would never came out. So if you could elaborate on that, I'd like to answer. But I do think that, I mean, obviously the version of 15 that came out 1.0 in 2016 was just I think one of the biggest problems with that version is just that it was just really incomplete and super buggy and just had so much stuff that was clearly missing from it and didn't actually make sense. So that much is just crazy. Yeah. It was Yosuke Matsuda's fault we didn't get Versus 13 and Wada's fault for the engine problems. Yeah. It was just levels of mismanagement that happened during this era. He continues to regard possible online features. There are many possibilities. To develop a big title for next-gen console, and the development costs and times increase significantly, along with its entire scale. When it comes to offline games, even titles that have been in development for years can easily be played out in a short period of time. In order to increase the span of playtime, I believe that online features are definitely required. Also, in order to keep the story and anticipation going, I believe that such features are needed. So we're currently exploring possibilities. Famitsu then asks whether there are plans involving the PlayStation Vita or other hardware. To this, Nomina replies that Square Enix are interested in the Vita and smartphones and tablets and new developments, not only for PS Vita, but we're also exploring possible implementations for smartphones and tablets to bring new developments that have been yet to be seen in the Final Fantasy series. Nomina says, I believe that such expandability has been made possible thanks to the advantage of switching our development method to a PC base. This whole thing should probably go in the notes as well. Because it seems like Comrades was definitely something that they had been planning for quite some time. He then says, I deeply apologize for having you wait for so long. I hope that our latest announcement has been able to meet your expectations. From this point on, the quality will only be getting better. We plan on revealing more information at the future large events such as the Tokyo Game Show. So keep a close eye on the upcoming evolution of Final Fantasy 15. There are many of you that feel that Japanese developers have fallen behind from those from the West in the current generation. I believe this title will show you otherwise for the next generation. So this is a big sentiment that continued to carry on even after Nomura had left. And that is this idea that, in the previous generation, Japanese developers had fallen behind and they wanted to catch back up. So, Roy Mustang, thank you again for the super chat. Nomura's version of Final Fantasy 15 had to be scrapped altogether. At least 4 years of dead time went down the drain. Whatever Nomura was doing must have been awful. Thank you again so much for the super chat. So, I actually... Fuck. Let me find this. Because this is going to tell you, this is going to explain in deeper detail why this was changed. So why did Versus 13 as a story have to be scrapped? And I think, God, this is not formatted well at fucking all. And all I can do is zoom out. God damn. Is there another website where I can... where we can look at this that's not formatted as badly? This works. I was trying to make it so that chat could be readable. This is the best I can do. By the way, Versus 13 Lucis was set in a country of Reaper worship. This setting is a violation of the age rating criteria for games in some countries. So we cannot push these themes. To replace these themes, we have a backbone setting of black as a special color. I hope you'll wait for more information to come on this. We're still waiting for information to come on this because actually, that just never fucking happened. That just never fucking happened. But, so, Final Fantasy 15 was kind of, or Versus, I should say, was centered around kind of like a death cult, right? And this is not allowed in certain countries, particularly in China. Now, I've had like one person in particular that has like taken like, let's just say they tried to challenge this statement from me by showing like a Genshin Impact character that apparently has some type of ties to Reaper worship and whatnot. I do not think that is equivalent to what they had planned for Versus. For starters, my understanding is that big Chinese companies like HoYoverse have sort of like essentially like CCP, like advisory people that are able to personally navigate what is okay and what is not okay within China's cultural guidelines, right? And so, yeah. Also, who cares what a game did 10 years later? Rules change. It was probably true when he said it in 2014 or whatever, right? But also, why would he say it, right? Like, this is what he says, like, so I'm not sure even, actually, like, why the fuck is the person even trying to challenge me on it? Like, this is literally what he says is the reason it couldn't be done, is that it is a violation of the age restriction ratings, and that probably is China, right? Like, it probably is. Maybe it's somewhere else. I don't know. But if I had to take a guess, I would probably say this is meant to be, it's probably China this is like the biggest issue with. So, Yeah, I don't understand why that's an issue, but or why it's an issue for them, I should say. But well, that was a big issue. For those who already know a lot about FF15, like yourselves, may feel these settings are unnecessary. But for those who have been introduced to the world of 15, these settings can be a great help in familiarizing themselves with this new world. Now, let's say you do one pin have been asked by someone, what kind of game is FF15? It is hard to answer this question if you don't have a clear idea what the most important theme is. The FF series is comprised of so many elements and is among the most difficult to explain in a few words. For FF15, we consider very important to have a clear theme that you can explain in a few plain words. So my and all my fellow FF15 developers' answer to this question is, what kind of game is FF15? A game to regain a once lost kingdom. I like the quote from this person in this forum, which is FF12 already did this, by the way. Which yeah, because kind of the special thing is about Final Fantasy 15 was, or the original plan with Versus was essentially this kind of death cult and the Reaper worship and them worshiping a goddess of death. And death symbolism is still baked into Final Fantasy 15 in an almost hilarious way, right? Like to the point of where, I mean, the Ring of the Lucii, like, drains the life force from people. The fact that you go around and you go to the tombs of previously deceased kings and basically their soul turns into a weapon. And when you think about that, like, armigers are basically like, they're ghosts, right? And Noctis is like absorbing the ghosts of his relatives, right? There are skull and bones all over his clothes. They all wear black. The Lucius sigil being a skull. Right. Actually, I want to say the Lucius flag is also... Let me see. Is also a skull. Chat, does this look like something the Kingdom of fucking Light? The Kingdom of fucking Light would have? Do you think the Kingdom of Light would have this be their flag design? It's still so obvious in the game that you know what these themes are meant to be. So, you know, this shit was not possible to do. Right? And so again, going back to whether or not it was China, even this person also assumes that it's China here. So essentially, the personified death, presumably Etro, in the original vision, as the guiding deity for expiring souls, is too hardcore for a good chunk of the global audience because of the age ratings, such as China, I would imagine. And I would say that it's probably more than just China, and like probably some other countries too. It probably wouldn't be able to release. I imagine they would probably have a difficult time getting this approved in like Saudi Arabia, for example, and like other countries. Um, so yeah, I think that the death cult stuff was just too much. And then also too, you guys have to remember that Versus 13 was going to be a lot more violent than what was planned for Final Fantasy 15, right? Like Versus was definitely going to have... I mean, one of the shocking things about Versus was in the first trailer, you know, they showed Noctis like stabbing through a soldier and him bleeding out. And so, that type of thing would definitely violate the age rating, right? Like, and especially in some places like China, right? Like, especially in China, where you can't depict that type of thing and like purple smoke comes out or something like that, right? And not actual blood. Combine that with it's got to be T and it's got to be one game, and pretty much every decision cascades from there on out, right? Yeah, like pretty much everything is so explanatory from just that alone. And when you look at that and you think about it, in a weird way, in a very strange way, Tabata is kind of correct. He did try to preserve as much from verses in 15 as he could, and he did so to the point of where it's literally fucking incomprehensible in a lot of ways as a story, as a complete product, because it is a brand new story layered on top of a story that did not get to be completed. And so it's almost like they just took the world and the characters and like all the symbolism, but like all the actions that take place in it are different. Given FF16 is M rated, do you think they'll stay M rated for 17? I don't. I don't think they'll stay M rated for 17. I think they'll dial back to T for 17. I don't have any proof. But I just don't imagine. Really, NSP, no M? I think the M rating didn't benefit them in the way they thought it was going to be, and so I think that they're going to go back to T. I think that Final Fantasy 17 will be, and I don't mean this to say that it will be like completely whimsical, but it will have more whimsy to it than Final Fantasy 16. I actually think that 17 is going to be a lot more Japanese taste aligned. I think. I do. Not gonna lie, FF16 didn't even feel like a worthy M-rated game half the time. I don't think that FF16 like deeply needed the M rating in a lot of cases. I do think that there's a T-rated version of that game that you could have made. Honestly. Yeah, it was like the swearing, and I'm not against the swearing. Like I'm not like, oh, they said fuck so many times or something like that, but like it was a big swing. If it were my call, I would keep FF M rated from now on, just because that frees them up in what they can do for storytelling. But I don't know if it was like super necessary or not. I think it would have benefited re-trilogy quite a lot, but that's also kind of the problem too. See, like re-trilogy, like, or like FF7 has like certain moments where things get really dark and you need that M rating again. But yeah, we don't need purple blood like FF7 again. I think they're gonna keep the T rating from now on. I just don't think the M rating swing paid off for them big enough. And since they're more concerned about sales than ever, I think that they're going to continue to like double down on the T rating. I could be entirely wrong about this. This is purely based on vibes. So, we don't fucking know. NSP, would you rather have gotten the darker story or an in rating for verses, or what we got for, you think was better for the game? No, I would have rather gotten verses with an M rating. I do. Like if you're asking me like which I would prefer, I want to be clear that it is indeed the M rating in general. And that's not because I think that like Final Fantasy like needs to be like completely whimsy 24/7. It's just because it allows FF to be serious in the moments that it needs to be, in a way that it doesn't need to like censor itself and in that censorship, like, soften the impact of certain scenes. Stranger of Paradise used its M rating in some pretty funny ways. Yeah. I also think that that game, like, probably could have been a T-rated game, but also, um, I think I just wanted a different type of game for like Stranger of Paradise. Like, I feel like that concept had so much potential, and I just feel like I don't like the way they did it. Let me actually read this last thing regarding the color black and why it seems so cool now. The clothing worn by the four main characters is the official battle gear of the Lucius Kingdom. Noctis is a member of the royal family, and the other three characters are part of various Lucian national organizations, and they are each wearing the specific battle dress relevant to their individual stations. In the kingdom of Lucius, where our heroes reside, the color black has been treated as a special color. Because of this, the attire of the royal family and those who occupy and those in occupations closely tied to them are unified by having black as a base color. This is part of the lore. This part of the lore is the reason why all four of the main characters are black. That's a typo. Wear black. For the finished game, we also intend on having their clothes having effects in battle and not just being part of the world and its background. So watch out for that one too. So whatever they had planned for like why black was a special color, that just straight up never made it into the game, right? They wanted to do something else with it to show that like, hey, black is actually a special color, and it is for like a new reason that we came up with away from the death cult stuff, and then they just never fucking materialized that. So let's go on to the next one. Oh, we have to translate this shit to English. This shit is so hard to read. Actually, I don't think this one even had anything too good in it. Let me just see. 55%. Okay, that one actually didn't even... We can skip that shit. Nothing major in that. Game Informer. Hold on. Yeah, okay. Sweet. So Duskai. Try out Final Fantasy 15 on the length of Duskai. So in 2014, they were about 50 to 60% complete with the game on the open world. Not literally everything is open world, but it is pretty vast. You'll be able to explore freely. You may have noticed that they're traveling in a car. You can technically walk around the world, but we recommend using a vehicle, and it'll be a journey driving through the continent. Encounters are seamless. On stances, we won't go into too much detail, but you can switch between an offensive stance and a defensive stance with the push of a button. And that is indeed that is indeed the game. That is indeed Final Fantasy 15. New Final Fantasy icons. In creating the game, if you throw in familiar elements just to please the fans, it gives an impression that we're very shallow. I'm careful with that. Each element of a familiar Final Fantasy game, that icon, a Final Fantasy icon that I include, I have to think about how it applies to the settle of the particular Final Fantasy number title and make sure that it's there because it's necessary. In episode Duskai, there's a sort of surprise element incorporated at the end. During the Versus era, though it might be weird to refer to it that way, we weren't able to reveal any information on release timing because that was a project in which we had to overcome so many different problems that arose. Unfortunately, we weren't able to. We were trying to work through the issues. The timing never matched. But about 2 years ago, when I officially joined the project, we did a pretty major directional change when we decided not to go with the previous generation. I also had a talk with Nomura-san about the direction Final Fantasy 15 was going to take. How do you guys think that conversation went? How do you guys think that conversation went, man? Unfortunately, it's still going to take a while but I'm hoping people will reset their timers from when I join the team and restart the count from there. That's crazy, dog. That's crazy. Like, considering how he appears to feel about the game now, and this statement, it is pretty wild, I must say. Fan reaction to 15 we can't gauge very well yet. Now that we have decided to put out a demo version, I'm hoping that fans will come back to us with their input and feed us the passion that everybody has and let us know how they feel about the game. Cool. Let's take a look at this one. Final Fantasy 15 further detailed in Famitsu. Okay, let's zoom in a little bit. There we go. That's more readable for you guys. In the current version of the engine is version 1.4. When the episode Dust Sky demo launches, it'll be 1.5. The final version of the game is planned to be 2.0. There are about 5 million polygons per frame, which each character, I think they mean with each character, made up of, at max, 100,000 polygons. The inner hair alone has about 20k polygons, which is 5 times the previous generation. Character models have around 600 bones, which is roughly 10 to 12 times greater than what was seen last generation. Data capacity for texture is also much greater than before. No sequels, no city action set piece that we don't have the resources to make. That was the conversation. I bet you anything. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think he was just like really supportive and he was like, yeah, just do what you need to do. But I think after that, clearly, and this is what's crazy. Well, I don't even know because he immediately went to Kingdom Hearts 3 and as soon as he went to Kingdom Hearts 3, he immediately made the thing with Versus 13, right? In KH3. So that was right after. So clearly, I don't think that his reaction to that news was like super wholesome, like, oh yeah, it's fine. Because again, he went kind of straight into making a commentary about Final Fantasy 15, like right after. So these bullet points are exactly the kind of thing that drove me insane with the press for the game. They needed to say anything to fill interview and active time report space, so it was constant. Our textures are better. We have more bones. There's a day-night cycle, like it was news. You know what though? But like, it was so engaging at the time. It was so like, it felt like it was cooking. So yeah, I mean, they were like, yeah, guys, we got more bones than ever. But I was reading that at the time and I was like, fuck yeah, dude, they got bones. Let's fucking go. We didn't have bones last gen. Final Fantasy 13 was boneless. Let's fucking go. They're bringing it back, boys. We have more hair than has ever been haired before. Noctis will come with a bottle of Rogaine. I was hyped looking at all those tech demos, especially with the hair and weapon animations. Yeah. This reminds me of how people translated every Hamaguchi interview ever. Even he said if he's even saying something he said last week. Yeah. It was kind of fun that they were inviting us in the development process, but it also felt kind of desperate. Yeah. Well, I mean, it was. They were desperate. They were like, fuck, dude, how do we keep people excited for this thing when we have to like restart development? Dude, I think KH fans would eat this shit up if we got like news. And they were like, yeah, Kingdom Hearts 4 has more fucking bones than have ever been boned before. We have a whole ass skeleton in Kingdom Hearts 4. Bro, I promise you, motherfuckers would be going crazy right now. They'd be like, yeah, Kingdom Hearts got the bones. We got an update, fellas. And then like 2 weeks later, they'd be like, what the fuck? There's no updates again. I was kind of it's kind of fun that they were inviting us in the development process, but it also felt, did I just read that twice? I'm sorry. I do that sometimes. Um I remember I remember all the Tabata and his team are miracle workers talk when the game came out. And I think showing how the sausage was made was a big part of it. They made barely clearing the bar look like a big success, emphasizing how hard it was to clear the bar. Yeah, I think that's also like really important. Because, like, let's be honest here. If they didn't communicate how difficult all this was, all we would think or all we would know as fans is they spent 10 years working on this and the game came out like this and it's missing this, that, and the other. And it feels so incomplete and rushed. And what happened with this plot point and that plot point? And why is this so, like, kind of told in a rush? Right? And also, it wouldn't be as transparent how different 15 was from Versus, right? So it really would look like they just spent 10 years trying to make a thing, and then the thing came out, and everyone's like, what the fuck? So, the kind of meta story behind how hard it was to put this shit together probably benefited them. It probably gave people a lot of mercy whenever they went to judge this game, because I feel like there is no fair critique of 15 without acknowledging kind of the circumstances by which it was created. And that may be true of all art, to be fair. But yeah. Battles against huge enemies are carried out in the same fashion as standard battles, but there will be some exclusive party co-op actions for the bigger fights. There will be several mini games, including fishing, Restalum, which I'm pretty sure they mean Lustalum. We called it Restaru and then Restarog. We were wrong twice. It's hard to play by ear sometimes, and they're wrong like a fucking third time. It's Lustalum. Is being made in the image of the Bahamas. Right now, the ropeway in Lustalum can't be rowed, but we might add the ability to ride it if there is time to do so. There was not time to do so. The development team wants players to get a feel for the world and find it relatable, not just steer through sheer visuals, and also through the characters. In towns, you can go to hotels or go shopping. That's still true. NPCs in towns are controlled by AI, and you can talk to them. That's so funny, dog. That's been true of every like RPG since like the Famicom. This is like true of every RPG ever made. That's what I'm talking about. Okay, you're right, Jacob. You're right, bro. You're so right, dog. There are NPCs in this game and the computer controls them. Yeah, this has never been done before. We have NPCs. And with the brand new power of the PlayStation 4, you can press the X button and they'll talk to you. This has never been done before in a video game. Please look forward to the 15th mainline Final Fantasy game. Oh my god. Lustalum is a main town in the first half of the game. Yeah, it serves as one of the 2 towns in the game. Cindy shows up in different places throughout the game. Something happens with her at the start that shakes her up and gets her moving around. That's an insane fucking sentence. Something happens that shakes her up and gets her moving around. Wow, okay. Insane sentence. But also, does this happen? I know she can tow your car, like if you run out of gas or some shit, but like, I don't remember Cindy like really showing up at different places? No, it does not happen. Okay. Yeah, because I'm like trying to think. I'm like, when the fuck does Cindy show up at different places throughout Cape Cod? Oh, maybe. Maybe. She's at the lighthouse? Okay. She shows up somewhere else in the demo, but I guess they cut that. Okay. Maybe I'm tripping. It's been so long since I've done like a complete playthrough that I don't remember. Um, she's not deeply involved in the story, but she's relevant because her profession as a mechanic. Players will have to fight summon beasts in order to be able to use them. This is only true of 2 summons. They kind of teased like they kind of teased almost like an icon versus icon type thing back then. And then you can tell that just doing Titan and Leviathan, they were like, we don't have budget for the rest of this shit. Summon beasts in the game are a symbol of the power of the stars. Only Noctis can actually summon them. Combat wise, the plan is holding out a button will start a set combo, but the time button presses are what will enable coordinated moves with other party members. To parry enemy attacks, you have to match the timing of their strike. This is intended for expert players. Magic isn't what consumes MP, nor is the system akin to the draw system that Final Fantasy VIII has, except it kind of a little bit is similar to the draw system. Not verbatim, but a little bit conceptually, I'd say. The crazy thing is that the MP in 15 was used to warp strike and dodge, although you had a dodge roll. And like, I kind of think it would just be better if there just was an MP. I kind of like look back on that system and I'm like, this would just be better if there just was an MP. The only reason that there's MP is because what is to stop you from infinitely dodging and infinitely warp striking? That was kind of like the limitation, you know, to cap you off. But I feel like there had to be more fun and more balanced ways to approach that, because I feel like MP is less MP and more stamina in FF15. That's actually a great way of putting it. That's a great way of putting it. But I really do feel like if there was just no stamina, there was just no MP, and there were more organic ways or more interesting gameplay ways and gameplay choices that would make you choose to not spam warp all the time, that probably would have made for interesting game design than just being like, we need a reason to like basically like cool you down to have stamina. And I just don't think that that the current system, like for example with dodging, if dodging was timed rather than an action that you just hold the button, then that would have been better, right? That would have made for a better action game for sure. Nah, man, dodge rolling is magical. I don't dodge roll in real life as I'm not a magician. Like if there was going to be cover mechanics, the environment should have been able to be destroyed, like in Dark Souls, yeah. And that was originally kind of the plan, but they ran into a lot of hardware restrictions with it, and the frame rate chugs whenever that happens. Which is why when we were playing Platinum Demo and the Iron Giant would destroy something, and whenever he would destroy something, the frame rate would go down into the teens. So it was pretty bad. Weapons are equipped several at a time with one main weapon. The main weapon has a corresponding ability, and it's possible to switch the main weapon during combat. Combos are automatically formulated based on which weapon is currently being utilized out of the ones being equipped. Abilities aren't separate from weapons given category. There are also weapons that have no ability at all. Apparently, not unlike what was seen in Captain Tsubasa 5, a game that Tabata apparently worked on back in the day. Rare weapons can be acquired from dungeons and other sketchy areas, could potentially have some hack and slash aspects to how they're used. The Phantom Sword, which floats in the mid-air, will also be acquired as a special weapon. This goes back to, again, they were calling them Phantom Swords, and the Phantom Swords, they're phantoms, they're ghosts. This is a leftover thing from Versus, right? The battle system from the demo is planned to be fully featured. After the Tokyo Game Show, the systems going into the demo were slightly changed as a result of fan feedback. Players will be able to run around in areas such as mountainous areas where the behemoth roams. In the full version, you'll be able to rent chocobos. Camps are designed to be safe havens, making them ideal headquarters when setting out to explore new areas. There are bonuses that come with cooking ingredients purchased in towns and cities. You can get ingredients from monsters in the wild. Cool. So let's actually head into 2015. Final Fantasy 15 started development 3 years ago. So that means it started development as Final Fantasy 15 in 2012, and Versus 13 was a quarter complete. The director behind Final Fantasy 15 has shared a few new details on the development process behind the hotly anticipated RPG during a recent chat with IGN at PAX. Hajime Tabata confirmed that the development on the project kicked off around 3 years ago, at which point its original incarnation, the PS3 exclusive Versus 13, was around 20 to 25% complete. It's a little rough, but in terms of how much it had progressed in terms of development, Versus was around a quarter complete, said Tabata. In terms of character designs or visuals, nothing had been fixed at that point. We were still working on updating it and revising those designs. He added that Versus was originally announced at E3 2006 and was developed up to the point that 15 started development. Tabata added that while much of the game's content wasn't changed in the transition to Final Fantasy 15, while much of the game's content has changed in the transition to 15, some elements of the original version are still present. With regards to the overarching universe and setting for the world of Versus 13, it was constructed around the Fabula Nova Crystallis setting. So there was a certain amount that had been included and decided upon. But when we shifted to Final Fantasy 15, we took that apart and evaluated what would make sense and what wouldn't. So there's portions that remain from the earlier Versus 13, but then there's portions which evolved or changed due to the direction of the new title. And this is kind of an ongoing theme too, where again, they took a story and they kind of took like the world and characters, and then they wrote a completely different story about those world and characters. And you can see a mismatch in many moments between what was originally intended and what the new title is. And they kept so much of the art and so many of the concepts that ultimately the things in the game don't even match together. Originally, when we were working on Final Fantasy Versus 13, we were working on an earlier generation of console and technology, and that we were working on was utilized for this earlier generation as an extension of the PS2 era. So that was a significant difference between 15 and Versus 13. Cool. Okay, chat, y'all are about to get really mad about this one. Y'all are going to be really mad. Y'all are going to be really mad. Luna, hold on. Unfortunately, this does not show up well. So I'll just paste it into the doc so you guys can read it easier. Okay, that font might be too big. So I'll just paste it in here. With TGS over, several interviews with director Haji. Oh, fuck. I'm sorry. The cropping is off. Luna shows up as a guest party member. And by the way, with this headline here, if you go and look on YouTube, you can still find evidence of this. I had included this once in a video a while back, like years ago, damn near 10 years ago. And I don't know if the person like was a big fan of me talking about some of the stuff that they had data mined. I don't know if that's like still the case, because I used some of the stuff that they had pulled out. But maybe I will see if they're still around and if I can message them and like ask if I could feature some of that stuff in my video. I don't know if they'll ask, but I'm sure I can still talk about some of those discoveries, sure. With TGS over, several interviews with director Hajime Tabata are now coming out of the Japanese media circuit. While a lot of information is already known, namely the game's beginnings with Noctis and friends out on the road, as well as a long-promoted signing ceremony between Niflheim and Lucis, there are a few bits of new information regarding Luna and Noctis in the story. Luna and Noctis' wedding is meant to take place in Altissia, located in Accordo. Which, by the way, Accordo kind of just got fucking deleted, right? Like, as a nation. Because Accordo used to be, like, kind of its own nation. And they kind of condensed Accordo to just be Altissia. Like, as, like, a city-state. Instead of being kind of, like, its own nation and continent and landmass. It's kind of just, like, yeah, it's just Altissia now. Located in Accordo. The signing ceremony takes place and Noctis and friends are heading there. Luna is heading there as well. If you pay attention to the new artwork of Luna, she is actually in a certain location in Altissia. It appears the near-death experience Noctis and Stella had from Versus 13 lives on in Final Fantasy 15 with Noctis and Luna. Despite the images, and that is true actually, the near-death experience that Noctis has is still technically in there. It's in Brotherhood, but they really don't elaborate on it too much outside of that. Despite the images of a young Noctis, we won't see his growth as a child to an adult. Instead, the game starts when he is already grown at the time of the peace treaty. We will learn about the childhood stories during the events of the game. Kind of. Also in Platinum Demo, technically? Oh, yeah, that's right. Because Platinum Demo is basically when he's resting up from that injury, right? Tabata did mention that we will see Luna fight. Her battle will be as a guest party member. But unlike Core joining your battle, you will join hers at some point in the game. Okay. Again, and this is like, I think this is where a lot of people kind of like get contentious with FF15 and like get angry at this game, because it's not so much, that they just didn't deliver Final Fantasy Versus 13. They also kind of didn't deliver the Final Fantasy 15 that they were kind of advertising too in a lot of ways, right? So the idea of Luna being a guest party member, cut from the game. The idea of Core joining the party, cut from the game, and he's kind of relegated to being a guest. And there's a lot of ideas that they had, and then they just didn't show up. And it's not even like, oh, that was an idea from Versus. It's like, no, this was an idea from Final Fantasy 15 that they came up with, and then it's just not in the game, right? And so I'm going to paste this one into my notes. One sec. And let me make sure I grab the link for that. because we're going to talk about that in the video, in the essay. Noctis' father, Regis, is around 50 years old at the start of Final Fantasy 15, but he's aged well beyond that due to maintaining the magic around the magic barrier around Lucis. Okay. That's a concept that I completely forgot about, to be honest. That the magic that you use is supposed to aid you. Because it only comes up in the movie, you're right. It does only come up in the movie. And Noctis never seems to like age from it, but maybe he's not using that much magic, right? Noctis could also meet this fate if he inherits the throne. Because of this, Regis is torn on whether or not he should let Noctis become the next king. When a king of Lucius dies, their wisdom gets passed down to the next generation, thus the royal line lives on. That ring that Nomura mentioned in the past as a significant object is in fact inherited by the next person in the line for the throne of Lucius. Naturally, Regis poses one of these rings. What happens to the ring during the Lucius invasion? This is a key point. The ring contains both the power and wisdom of the previous kings. I know this is like an insane rant, but like, I hate the fact that like in the movie, there is this scene where like Nyx is judged by all the previous kings, and like anyone who puts on the ring, basically, you were judged by all the previous like kings of Lucis. I do not like the fact that that was not a moment for Noctis. I think that would have been such a powerful moment for him to be judged by all of the previous kings. And they kind of just don't do it. And it sucks. Because that would have been such a great moment. That would have been such a great scene. For Noctis to have to argue with them. And for them to have to be like, okay, we'll give you our power, right? Like for it to actually be like an emotional payoff there. And I just really think, I was going to say, why don't they judge him? Dude, I hate that they don't judge him. They're just like, yeah, you have the royal blood. We're not going to judge you. The way I would have like imagined that scene in my head is that like the kings would have been like, basically like, no, you're like a little bitch, Noctis. Like, we're not giving you our power. And then maybe like Regis like has to come out and like vouch for Noctis and say, this is my son and I believe in him. And Noctis and like his dad have like that one last moment where they get to talk and share this moment. And it's like kind of like him coming out to like defend his son and show like one last time, like, son, I have faith in you that you can do this. And then he puts the fucking ring on, and then he's like super powerful, and he's able to like blow his way out of like Niflheim with it. I get emotional even thinking about like imagining that scene playing out. And I don't know how they didn't consider it. They had to have considered that. I don't know if they didn't have time or what the fuck. I don't know. Because they gave up on that idea. But like a lot of Versus ideas, they were already locked into a movie script that had been mocapped and recorded years before the game came out, right? And if you look at Kingsglaive, I think that there's kind of signs that like you mentioned, that they were already kind of like locked in, and the movie was already out, and they wanted to keep changing shit, but they couldn't because the movie was already out. And in some ways, Kingsglaive does feel like it belongs to a story that is not necessarily Final Fantasy 15's. Stop talking crazy. You're suggesting that Noctis and his dad should interact in a game Tabata said was all about Noctis's relationship with his dad. I know. Anyways, anyways, this is a key point. The ring contains the power and wisdom of the previous kings. The summoned swords are also inherited from each previous king. In the story, there are items such as the weapons of the previous king that Noctis must collect no matter what. They're a fucking side quest. What the fuck? That's crazy. Because they're like, you have to collect all the royal arms. And then the game just continues even if you don't. Because they're like, we'll just give you the royal arms whenever you need them. Regarding summons, Tabata says there aren't many in the game. You'll encounter them in the story, but they won't care at all about what's happening in the human realm. We don't know what they think either. Summons have their own intelligence, gender, and willpower. They behave very different from that of humans. They play an important role in the concept of the power of the stars. Between now and the March event where Square will announce the release of the game, Tabata would like to attend the community events if possible, and he really wants to hear voices of the fans. Gendered summons? Yeah, wasn't Leviathan a girl? In FF15? Or am I tripping? I'm pretty sure Leviathan in 15 was a girl. I want to say. Oh, well, here it is. This is what I was looking for earlier. Unfortunately, this setting is a violation of the age criteria in some countries, so we cannot push these themes. Tabata says that the goal is the team to be able to boil down the rating of the game into a few words. He says that the theme they have come to is a game to reclaim the kingdom lost. Yeah. So they had to sacrifice all of that to make it work. And then this is the past, present, and future of Final Fantasy 15. It's been a while, I think, since. Well, let me zoom in on this. It's been a while since I think it was Gamescom a couple of years ago, and you've made a Final Fantasy game since then. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it. We've also been working really hard to make sure even more people like it. It even made me cry a bit towards the end. When the Amano artwork faded, it really got to me. We had a lot of discussions with Mr. Amano how we'd get that to work and how we'd proceed with it. We really want to give him that symbol, the new logo that's about starting a new journey. It's been 10 years since Final Fantasy Versus 13, and we really wanted to show that in a nice way. Honestly, the real reason behind the new logo is that the old logo has absolutely fucking nothing to do with the current game, like at all. Literally nothing to do with the final game. So they had to like kind of retcon it into Noctis and Luna, right? Like the idea that the logo is supposed to be Luna is objectively false because Luna didn't even fucking exist when that logo was drawn. So it's not Luna for sure. They retconned it in the Luna, and even that really didn't even fucking make sense at all. And so then they added Noctis like sitting on the throne at the end, and even that I feel like is not like a really great logo for like Final Fantasy 15. I don't know. I just didn't like it because it didn't really symbolize. I think that like maybe you should have had like an Amano like drawing of the fucking car. I don't know. That would have been like a better symbolism of like what the actual game ended up being. But I don't know. We had a discussion with Mr. Amano and how we get to that work. Oh, I just read that. It worked beautifully. There were a couple of bits with the story that weren't explained as well as they could have been. So we also wanted to generally improve that. Just generally speaking, what was the experience like working on a mainline Final Fantasy? It was certainly harder than any other project I've ever done in my career. I learned a lot more than I had before, too. I don't think I've fully digested it yet. Not enough to sum it up in one phrase, but it certainly was an experience. Is it something you'd ever want to put yourself through again? 50-50. If I was going to do another one, I'm sure I could do it a lot better next time. Certainly making a better game as well, getting it out there and making the whole project work. And also on the management side, I felt a number of limits and limitations on what I was doing, the way that Japanese companies are structured, the way that staff are handled and assigned to things. It's a lot of work. I think it's be a big burden, and I'd want to do it a lot better next time. I think 15 went in a good direction, though. It went very well. It wasn't a Japanese market based project, it was a global project. We changed a lot the ways we made the game and the structure of the team. If we do it again, I think we could go even higher and make it a truly global title. It might surprise you guys, but they definitely did not do it again. They definitely did not do it again. This was Tabata's last game at Square. What were your big regrets and what would you like to have done differently? When we finished the development of the game, we had no bandwidth left at all. Obviously, after it was released, you started seeing and thinking about things, and there were a few things that we were looking at afterwards, looking back with hindsight and thinking maybe we could change some things there. There were other things that we wanted to include during the development but couldn't. Those were quite separate things, really. The things we wanted to include from release, but because of schedule we couldn't. There were two of them, really. Just two of them. The first was off-road regalia. In the free driving section, that's something we really wanted in there, but unfortunately couldn't. The other thing was the transition into the second half of the game, into the linear section. We wanted to make that a lot more gradual and softer, rather than an abrupt change. Obviously, the thing we realized after release, and that's something slightly different. The issue we became aware of and were concerned about after the release, there was a certain way in the story was presented. Final Fantasy 15, it's not just the main game. There's a variety of other stories and content surrounding that. I think it was a good idea to do that. It creates a lot of entry points where people can get into the game from. But on the other hand, the people who played the main game, there's a feeling that you missed out on something important part of the story. And even in the main game, the core story of the world, the mythos, it's kind of sparse and missing stuff. That's something we could have done a bit more clearly. Even he's kind of like, yeah, the game is not complete and it's missing shit. And we know that. It's an interesting one. I played it one day and it didn't feel like the complete thing. It's the first game I've played that's had a story patch. That's obviously not something you planned for. During development, we were working around the clock, putting everything we had into it and killing ourselves to get the game made. It was a lot of effort, and when we completed and finished it, we felt like we had put everything into it, everything we could in at the time we had, and it was the best result we could have made. When you look back on that think we had that limited time period and our abilities were at a certain point, we were limited in what we can do. But now we've grown and developed as creators, we know how to do things a lot better. There's a feeling that we do it now, we do it a lot better, which is why we switched over to the service model. We want to continue to improve and add on to the game after release. That's the natural progression. We've made quite a lot of money off the game on day one. That's incredibly transparent. We made good profits off that, and though we thought, Shadow Master Key, what's up, man? Um, and we thought the best way to use that profit would be to thank the fans who played the games, to give back to them and use that to improve their experience. After doing a service model game, you learn a hell of a lot doing that. You realize certain things about games. It's been a rewarding experience doing that. I mean, okay, and then here's the thing, right? They kind of fucking had to. They kind of fucking had to do the service thing because I think that if they had just released Final Fantasy 15 1.0 and did not upgrade it in any capacity, did not touch 15 1.0 at all, no Royal Edition, none of the stuff that came after, I think that this game would be like people would have soured on it in a very strong way. I think. I did always appreciate they kept adding to the game. It wasn't ideal, but I did enjoy the new story DLC often more than the main game story. Yeah. And also too, there was kind of an excitement around it where it was like, could they fix the game? Like what would happen if they were actually able to fix it, right? Kind of like how people were invested in like a Realm Reborn and like Final Fantasy 14 coming out, where it was like, oh, cool, dude. Um, I'm excited to see if they can like fix this game. But anyway, continuing onward, the service model is something that that happened this time through circumstance. Is it something you do again through for a narrative experience like Final Fantasy? There are some things it suits and some things it doesn't. The reason why we chose it this time because it works for a narrative game from a storytelling perspective. It's not going to help. Wasn't because oh sorry. The reason we chose it this time wasn't because it works for a narrative game from a storytelling perspective. It's not going to help with that. It's really that connection with the community and fans rather than having a top-down model and having one point of contact with fans. I really want that longer relationship with them to keep working with the fans. It's something I think worked well this time, and it's something we've never done before. I have a feeling in the future we'll continue that with a longer, extended relationship with the community, and be considering what kind of content we provide to them for that longer relationship. In the final stretch coming up to the releases, I know there was a lot of pressure on getting it out on that date as it moved a few times. Did you want to ask for another delay? Tabata, I honestly didn't think of doing it. The project had been going on for 10 years at that point. Projects have a lifespan, and there's a certain limit you can take them to. You talk about limits, the team, the people making the game, they've already they're already way beyond their limits of their stamina and capacity. If I was going to take that away, that psychological pressure and overwrite that with a new goal and objective, that wouldn't have worked out. So that wasn't an option. There are people who out there with the opinion that there are stuff we released after the game came out that should have been there in the start. That's fair enough. And I think it's a fair opinion. But there's no way we could have done that physically. Having said that, looking at the team we have now, 1 year after the game came out, we powered up so much as game creators. We understand a lot more about the preparations and scheduling required to make things on this scale. And there's the feeling that we're going to be able to do so many more things. We want to take a full advantage of that in the next project. They did not take advantage of that in the next project. Yeah. I just wish the DLC could have been experienced during the game and not having to drop and go play the DLC was annoying. Yeah, I wish it was like all integrated like as one game. The opening set piece of Episode Ignis is a great point of comparison to show just how much they learned and improved from the base game. Yeah, it is. Because Episode Ignis, dang, that feels like what the Leviathan fight was supposed to be. Also, again, I'll say the contrast between the Nomada interviews and the Tabata interviews is stark. Yeah. You can tell that like Nomada, like he's like the artist brain whenever he's like giving his interviews, or Tabata is very much producer brained. How big is the active team working on Final Fantasy 15? We split into several smaller teams. There's those wider expansions, different hardware, different projects. Overall team is 100, 150 people. There are also outsourcing companies we use working on various projects. If you're talking about the internal staff, it's probably just under 150. Quite an impressive number. Tabata. I think people who run full games on that kind of level, they're really experienced. We've just now reached that level. That has to fucking go in the notes. Actually, I put this whole ass thing in the notes, honestly. Let me put the link next to that screenshot. Okay, that definitely needs to go in the notes. Making this video is going to be a nightmare, by the way. Because there's just so much content to talk about. Quite an impressive number. Yeah. So yeah, the team doing this was like really inexperienced at the time, and they did not like know fully like what the fuck they were doing. It's very clear. And Tabata is even pretty forthright with that. So at what point will you consider Final Fantasy 15 complete? We've come ever since release together with our fans, so I think it's really about when we can satisfy them and when the game can end and have a proper conclusion to it. We've got a plan up until the end of this year, but looking at that probably wouldn't satisfy the fans out there. They want more. I'd like to continue making stuff for the game into the next year, considering what the best way to finish it and have that big climax next year. So next year, we'll call it the end of the journey. Yikes. And I think we know what happened from there. You had the recent in-game survey. What did you learn from it? What's being actioned as a part of it? There is so much we learned. It's hard to sum up. There were people who enjoyed the game and people who didn't enjoy aspects. We were overwhelmed by the breadth of opinions, and it was so much wider than what we had expected. It was interesting to see what people wanted was so different. I also traveled a lot this year to different events, and I made sure to take time to listen to fan communities about what they liked and what they wanted. Based on those, I've got a plan about how I'd continue with Final Fantasy 15 and how I want to bring it to an end. And that end being Dawn of the Future. You've gotten a game that's directed by millions of people rather than just by yourself. Is that difficult? What happens when their vision and your own clash? Certainly there is that aspect, even when you're developing before release. You listen to what people want and voices of fans and potential players, and try to reflect that in the game. When you're developing, it's mainly about what the team thinks is the best shape to take. When you release it, it kind of switches over into a different phase. You hear a lot more opinions of people who've played the game and what they want from it. You're deciding by majority. It's not democratic, but it's more of a case of hearing all those opinions and based on what they're saying, what we think the best way of doing things is. It's a different method. Our plans for the future, there are 2 tracks. One is based on people that played the game and loved it. It's basically thinking of how we can add to that and make an even greater experience for them. And the other, there's people who played it and didn't like it so much. Maybe they moved away from it at a certain point. We're trying to work out problems there and how we can fix those and switch it to make something those people might enjoy. You got the PC version coming soon. There are features like first person, the photo mode. Could that stuff be folded back into the console version? Certainly, there are a number of features we can't put onto console. Anything that involves the NVIDIA libraries we can't do because of console limitations. The first person mode we could, that's feasible, and if people want that, we'll look into it. Thinking on my feet here, it would be possible, but it'd be hard work. That mode's designed for keyboard and mouse, so taking it to console, we'd have to optimize it for controller support. We'll be using everything from Final Fantasy 15 as a foundation for your next project. Our new project is very much going to use the Luminous engine. That's the future of the engine. In the midterm, it's going to be used for the PC version. Yeah. Yeah, about that. Our new project, I just read that. You mentioned recently in an all new project being taken on by the team. How many people are working on it right now? This is what ended up being Forspoken, by the way. It's a very small team, and we're at the very start of the process. We're all working out what kind of game we want to make and when we want to get it out and what kind of technical base we want. It's a very small team. At the moment, we're looking at 20 or 30 people. So it's still pre-production. It's not even pre-production yet. We've got quite a lot of technical investigation sorted out for that. We've got a lot of investigation about how online functions will work, moving away from dedicated game machines to cloud processing, how we could use those. None of that shit worked out, by the way. A lot of groundwork has been done with Final Fantasy 15, so we're in a good position going into the main development. So, you say you're targeting next generation platforms. When exactly do you expect them to arrive? I can't say anything directly for that. It's very much my own personal intuition when that might be. I've got an idea in my head, but it's not as though I've spoken with Microsoft and Sony and have that kind of information. I'm sure sometime in the future I'll look at Eurogamer and look for an article and see something. I think if that's the case, I'd better start working on my own plan now. Okay. It's a new IP. Did you want to make another Final Fantasy, or was it a relief to move on to something fresh? When what I really wanted to do is use everything I learned from Final Fantasy and put it into something new. You don't get many opportunities in the game industries to make something new when you want. So I really wanted to put everything into that. As I discussed with my boss, Mr. Matsuda, he thinks from a strategic perspective, using the 15 team to do something completely new, it's a very important strategy. It all works out. I'll let you know that we won't be announcing anything for quite a while. I remember you told me 2 years ago at Gamescom without a release date. Why'd you come to Gamescom? I'm not going to do that again. Damn. It shows a lot of faith from your seniors that they're giving you a new IP. This is kind of crazy. Like reading this, knowing everything that happened, that transpired after with him, like just fucking like leaving the company and Forspoken turning out the way that it did. And damn, dude, Jesus Christ. It shows a lot of faith from your seniors, so I take it that Final Fantasy 15 project has been considered a success. I think that's the way the project's seen within the company. That's the assessment of how it went, and I'm very happy to hear that. It made a lot of money. It's like the second time that he mentioned how much money 15 made in this interview. It made a lot of money and a lot of profit for the company, and that's a good thing. And the challenge of trying new things and expanding that's part of the company's strategic plan. Doing new things based on what we did with 15 is perhaps even more important. With 15's success and some of its failures, how do you think that's going to impact the future of Final Fantasy itself? I think that's something you guys, the journalists, would understand better than me. You can definitely say the breadth of what you can do with Final Fantasy has been expanded by 15. There are definitely more options for people who are making Final Fantasy in the future. There are definitely more options for people making. If you look at the reception, who bought the game and the demographics, we've really expanded the audience. Damn. Kind of the last game, really, to do that in a profound way. You even see the relationships being ruined in real time. Nomura starts off by saying Tabata is really cool and will help a lot, and then by the end, you see how strained it gets between them. Yeah, yeah, for sure. 15 is a certain milestone in the series in that way that set the groundwork for an even greater Final Fantasy game that can exceed 15 too. Every numbered Final Fantasy tries to take on new challenges. It depends on the team at the time. And the big one we took on with 15 was being a big entertainment spectacle. We did that in some ways, but there's more we could have done with that to expand on the recognition and how widely it spread. I think I understand now where that could have gone in my next project, what I'm really aiming for. Have you handed over the keys to whoever's doing the next one? 15 will be a foundation for will 15 be a foundation for them in any way? Mind you, Final Fantasy 16 is like 2 years into development at this point. I haven't passed on the keys quite yet. We've obviously still got plans for Final Fantasy 15 this year and next year. Also, in that sense, Final Fantasy 14 is still very much going on and very active. There's more to come yet. It's not really a huge leap of imagination, but to think that there's a team on 16 in this building right now, and there is. That actually was happening at the time. You got a fair bit of experience with the series now, so what's your one bit of advice for them? This is so fucking funny. That's a difficult one. I can't think of any one piece of wisdom I could proclaim to them. This might be quite abstract, but what I'd say to them is that if you're going to make a numbered Final Fantasy, you've got to put your whole life into it. You got to put everything into it. It's a job that has a kind of value up for your career, and there are fans dedicated out there. So you can't do any less for them. My own personal view of Final Fantasy, my own expectations for the future, I think it's a series that it really opens up the future of gaming. I'd love to see another Final Fantasy in my generation that really opens up and expands the future of gaming in a new way. 15 expanded the audience in a way that really did not stick. I wonder if 15 poisoned the well for a lot of gamers. It's really hard to say in like a super quantitative way, right? Like I don't know how I would like objectively say if like they just like 15 and then something about 16 didn't appeal to them, or if like 15 burned them and so after that they were like, oh, I'm not playing this shit again because I bought this shit and it was just so incomplete, and after all this time waiting, I don't know. I'm sure that it's multifactorial. I'm sure that all of those things and above are like represent some degree of people that defected from 15 to 16, right? Because, you know, we went from the game selling 10 million units to the next entry potentially selling under 4 million units, right? And so that is like an insane drop off. That's a 60% drop off in people from one game to the next. And it's hard to just say that like PlayStation 5 exclusivity, for example, is kind of like the only reason for that, especially when well, now the game's available for almost all platforms, and they'll probably have a Switch 2 version coming. But we can say that 7 took a hit from 15 as well. Yeah, it definitely did. So not as extreme, right? Because Drumjot, thank you so much for the Prime sub, man. Appreciate that. Still a factor though, right? And so I don't know. I don't think there's a singular thing, but I do think that there are multiple things that add it together. And yeah, I mean, even if 15 ticked all the boxes, it brought in a wide audience. If 16 didn't do the same things 15 did, it wasn't going to pull the same numbers. And that is why I'm such a a formula head. I don't know what the hell you call it. But that's why I say they need a formula that people enjoy and that they can iterate upon like they used to have with past Final Fantasy games. Because the thing is that like you may like lock in for Final Fantasy 15, but and then 16 comes out and it's such like a fundamentally different game, and it's like you may go from caring to not caring. immediately, right? And that's kind of like what's happened is that they gain some new audience members and then they lose audience members and then they gain audience members and then they lose audience members. When they had an identity, they were mostly just gaining, right? Like it was mostly just like momentum. Sure, you had a spike like Final Fantasy VII, but then after that, every Final Fantasy after 7 sold more, right? And so without a like kind of formula that you can build upon and continue to popularize and bring new people in without so much attrition, excuse me, because that's the problem that they have currently is that for all the new people they bring in, it never nets positive because they also have attrition. And not just of like old fans, right? But you get new fans that come in with like Final Fantasy 15 and then they're like, "Nah, I'm checking out for the next one." Right? Cuz even those new fans did not seem to like really stick around in a substantial way. So, okay. Okay, I think we'll call it a stream for today. I think this will be the end of it. Thank you guys so much for tuning in and watching me read articles from 10 years ago. We're going to be back on Monday. I think we might actually start playing the game on Monday. I don't know. We'll see. Uh because eventually I need to like actually start doing some writing on the development parts, and then we also need to make an essay on the actual game part, and then I also want to have a discussion with some content creators too. So I kind of want to have like be nice to have Frustrated Jacob on and Susie on, and like some of like the people that were really big on making content on this game back in the day. Okay. Love you guys and take care. We'll be back Monday. Peace.